Thank you, Chairman Warren and Ranking Member Van Hollen. Thanks for holding this hearing. Welcome, General Bondi.
Thank you, Senator.
Good to see you. I want to raise with you something that's been deeply concerning to me, General Bondi. The 2024 Democrat nominee for Vice President actually called federal immigration agents Donald Trump's modern-day Gestapo. This is dangerous for our agents. It's wrong. And it cuts against and it undercuts the rule of law. So I want to ask you a series of questions, General Bondi, and if you would accommodate me, I would appreciate it. First, you'll agree when a bill is passed by Congress and signed by the President, it's law, right?
Yes, Senator.
And until that law is changed by Congress, you have a duty to follow it, right? That's what the rule of law is.
Yes, Senator.
So let me read the law. We got it right here. On a warrant issued, in this case by the Secretary of Homeland Security, an alien may be arrested and detained pending a decision on whether the alien is to be removed from the United States. That's the law, isn't it? The law on the books passed by Congress that you have to follow, correct?
Yes, Senator.
Isn't it also the law that once an alien is ordered removed, quote, during the removal period, the Secretary of Homeland Security again, shall detain the alien? Is that the law?
It's correct, Senator.
It doesn't say illegal aliens ordered removed should be allowed to roam the country freely, does it?
No, Senator.
I know it doesn't. Here's another law. When an alien is ordered removed, the Secretary of Homeland Security shall remove the alien from the United States. Is there any ambiguity in these words?
No, Senator.
So ICE agents enforcing those laws aren't the Gestapo. They're supporting the rule of law, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
Is it a crime to obstruct federal agents?
Yes, Senator.
There are left-wing radicals all over the country physically attacking ICE agents. There are sanctuary cities that are interfering with law enforcement. How does the Department of Justice plan to hold those seeking to harm and obstruct federal agents? How do you hold them accountable?
Senator, I believe you've seen what we've been doing during the Los Angeles riots. We came in, if you spit on a law enforcement officer, no longer. We will charge you federally. If you loot a building, we will charge you with robbery under the Hobbs Act. All these people coming in, looting these businesses. They just called it looting and let them run out the door. No longer. You touch a law enforcement officer, we will identify you. We have great technology now. And those people are the ones who have really been wearing the mask and trying to cover their identities. We've been finding them. We have been charging them with assault on a federal officer, and there will be no offers and no negotiations.
Well, think about it. A federal facility, an ICE facility, was under siege in Los Angeles. I mean, certainly, you and the President weren't going to stand by, were you?
Absolutely not.
No, I appreciate that. I'm grateful to you and to President Trump for upholding the rule of law in this case. I want to finish by revisiting a conversation you and I had back during your nomination, because I very much appreciated that. And it has to do with my home state, the city of Memphis, your commitment to come and see us in Memphis to deal with the fact that we've had rising crime. This is a problem across the country. But I'd like to ask your commitment again, General, to deploy law enforcement resources, particularly prosecutorial resources in Tennessee as they're needed.
I know you deeply care about Tennessee and the crime in Memphis and throughout your state, and you have called me numerous times to talk about that, and you care about our U.S. attorneys there, and I welcome talking to both sides of the aisle, working with you on any matters regarding law enforcement. But yes, you care deeply about the citizens of your state, as well as Senator Blackburn, and thank you both for caring so much and your input on our U.S. attorney there.
Thank you, General Bondi, and I'll look forward to seeing you in my home state sometime very soon.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Capito.
You know, when I'm home in my district talking to my constituents, they are concerned about their safety. They are concerned about the safety of their communities, the safety of their neighborhoods. And as we have spoken many times under your leadership, the DOJ has taken decisive steps to restore the rule of law, to tackle violent crime, and to hold both foreign and domestic bad actors accountable. I read your opening statement. And I just wanted to give you an opportunity to go back again and talk about, in light of 4 years of open borders, the drugs that are coming in, the sex trafficking, the human trafficking, the gangs that have moved in, the terrorism that has infiltrated the United States, the sleeper cells that may or may not be present in this country, the political prosecutions that we saw over the 4 years of the Biden administration, the fact that we are restoring integrity to the office and the rule of law. Can you restate for my constituents how the actions of the Department of Justice and your agencies are keeping them safe?
Thank you, Congressman. And we have also been working hand in hand on a task force with your governor, with Governor Youngkin. And we started a task force with Governor Youngkin, and that's something that we would like to take to every single state, both Democrat and Republican. And that's how we've been able to fight these gangs, these transnational cartels, these organizations, these criminal organizations. And it was really remarkable. One of the top members of TDA was living 20 minutes from where we're sitting right now in Virginia, and working hand in hand, regardless of political party, with state and local law enforcement officers throughout the state of Virginia. We were able to dismantle a major gang, and there are so many gang members, and he was another one who was living there. I think when he was arrested, he had multiple, and ATF was involved in that, multiple guns when he was arrested, but he did not have any of the drugs on him. He had insulated himself because he was one of the leaders of the criminal organization. And so these task force working together with the state of Virginia have been remarkable. So that's one way to break it down, what we've done. And we're just so proud of the partnership that we've had with your state, dismantling the gangs, the guns, the drugs, and we'll continue to do that.
And when you have that partnership, you can get a lot done.
You can get so much done.
Secure a safer community for the people living there. When you have sanctuary states like California and who are preventing you from actually getting in there and actually getting the gangs off the streets, getting the drugs and the human trafficking off the streets, that hurts the people of those states. You know, when the streets of Los Angeles descended into scenes more fitting of a failed state than a major American city, mobs setting fire to police cruisers and looting entire city blocks, videos online showing American flags being burned and the flags of foreign nations being flown, some carried by rioters proudly waving them through smoke-filled streets. The Department of Homeland Security has revealed new data saying that ICE law enforcement is now facing a 500% increase in assaults while carrying out enforcement operations. Can you describe what actions you've taken to hold these sanctuary jurisdictions accountable? And I have a couple questions after that.
Yeah, thank you. To California specifically, and we have made it very clear. If you spit, I believe it was an ICE officer, someone spit on him, we charge them federally. We will charge you if you spit on a law enforcement officer. If you loot under the Hobbs Act, that is a robbery, and we will charge you with robbery. We are going after the maximum penalty federally for anyone who touches a federal agent, and we are also going to protect our state and local law enforcement agencies and officers. The men and women every day around this country, whether it's a blue or red or purple state, are out there fighting crime. That's what they care about. They care about keeping every single one of us safe. That's what they're doing. They care about preventing drug abuse, drug overdoses throughout this country. And they jeopardize their lives every single day to keep us safe. And we are going to do everything in our power to fight for them.
Do you think that these sanctuary jurisdictions, these cities or states, should be receiving law enforcement grants if they refuse to uphold the law?
That's pending litigation, Congressman, and I can't discuss that right now.
I think the answer should be no, but I'll leave that to the judges and to this committee to decide. Thank you.
Time of the gentleman.
Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Attorney General, for being here today. You know, when the DOJ submitted their budget, the United States was a nation at peace, and now we're a nation at war. So my questions are going to be focused on national security. How many Iranian sleeper cells do we suspect are in the United States?
Congressman, I can't talk about that in this setting, but what I can tell you is I know Homeland Security, I know the FBI. They are focusing on doing everything we can to keep our nation safe, and they will continue to do that. Yeah, it's a frightening time in which we live right now, but President Trump is committed to keeping all Americans safe, and we look forward to working with you on that.
Great, thank you. How many active cases of threats to the homeland does DOJ currently have open as of today?
Countless. I can't talk about those in this setting either. Obviously, anything pending regarding national security issues. But there is not a day that goes by that we don't discuss the issues that you just brought up with me at the Department of Justice. But I also know that our counterparts at DOD, HSI, the State Department, and all of our agencies are working together to make America safe and, in turn, keep our world safe.
This is very much on my mind. I spent 20 years in the military. I spent 5 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. These aren't, of course, these aren't dots on a board. And, not only American lives abroad, what we saw today, are at risk, but it's also American lives here at home. And I don't want us looking back and going, what if? I want us to, as much as we can, get ahead of it, to give you the resources, the instruments that you need to go out and make sure that we're preventing things from happening, not waiting until after the fact. There was a report, of over 1,500 Iranian nationals that have entered the country illegally over the last several years. Do we know, out of those over 1,500, how many of those have been convicted of a crime?
Yeah, I don't have the number of the conviction, but it's well over 1,000 have entered. Yes, I don't know if it's quite up to 1,500, but yes, it's well over 1,000 have entered our country. And I can tell you we are on high alert, and everyone is looking at that very closely.
Just some things just don't line up as far as us. I see the world is on fire now more than ever before, right? Once again, when this budget was submitted, we were a nation at peace, and now things have changed. I look at this, I see law enforcement and national security has a reduction of $645 million, over 1,500 positions. The notes I have, the FBI will implement cost-saving measures. The largest decreases will be in criminal, cyber, response and service branches, and national security branches. FBI's criminal investigation, cyber, and international operations will reduce resources and support various investigations and partnerships. Additionally, the counterintelligence, counterterrorism, threat screening, and weapons of mass destruction programs experience reductions. I mention those things because those, in my eyes, those are the programs that we need more resources to, more manpower to. And not everything's about money. I mean, you alluded to this. A lot of times it's about being more efficient with the things that you're doing. I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of the way we're looking to get ahead of any problem sets.
Thank you, and we can do more with less. Of course, you can always do more with more, but we're doing more with less. We're prioritizing, we're refocusing, and the budget request supports $7.5 billion for national security. Also, that's why it's very important, I believe, for all of you to support Big Beautiful Bill. The One Big Beautiful Bill gives us a lot of additional funding at the Department of Justice to carry out our mission. The Senate version gives us $11.82 billion. Currently, the House version gives us $3.3 billion. Hopefully, they will come to a compromise in there, but that's where it will truly help Department of Justice combat all of the issues that you brought up and many others. And thank you for your service to our country, especially now. I didn't realize that you had served in Iraq. Thank you.
Yeah, no, of course. And thank you for saying that. I mean, resources matter. And the Big Beautiful Bill, we look forward to getting that to the president's desk as soon as possible. Once again, to give you the resources and the tools you need to get ahead of these problems that we see so clearly coming through. I represent nearly half of the southern border. The border is on my mind quite a bit. One of the questions I have, I focus a lot on convicted criminal illegal aliens. Do we know how many illegal aliens have been convicted of a crime in the United States?
Yeah, I can get you those specific numbers. I don't know, but many. I can tell you our prosecutors are indicting and charging illegal aliens constantly, violent crimes, rapes, thefts, many crimes throughout this country. And yes, our borders were wide open. And Congressman, back in September, I went to our border at Yuma, Arizona, not in Texas, but in Yuma. And at our border, what I saw firsthand, we saw IDs just dropped from every country you can imagine. El Salvador, Venezuela, China, every country you can imagine. And of course, I didn't see Iranian driver's license, but they are coming into our country. Yes, we know that's documented, but just walking into our country. And that's why Homeland Security, that's why ICE, that's why the FBI, that's why all of our agencies, DEA, ATF, are all working hand in hand to combat that and to keep Americans safe. And that is what President Trump is committed to doing.
Thank you. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome. It's good to see you here. I want to thank you, General Bondi, and your staff, and all the men and women that work for you that keep us safe. I'd like to echo Senator Moran's comments from earlier. I am always open to conversations about where federal agencies can find savings and efficiencies, and I believe that is critically important for government accountability. However, I received outreach from local law enforcement in Nebraska about the possible transfer of high-intensity drug trafficking areas program to the Justice Department. They fear this recommendation from the Office of Management and Budget could hinder the program's ability to fight drug trafficking. I appreciated your comments before the House Appropriators earlier this week, confirming that HIDA will remain where it is in the Executive Office of the President. We've heard your offers today to many on this committee. I appreciate those offers to work together to make sure that we're going to find effective and needed grants and keep those open, and I thank you for that. I continue to be concerned about the threat of the Chinese government. General Bondi, the threats that they pose to our critical infrastructure here in the United States, and that's whether we're looking at vulnerabilities in our communications network or with agriculture. The CCP is trying to exploit our information and our innovation every time. I want to recognize good work of the FBI field office in Omaha. They have been working proactively to address these state-sponsored foreign cyber threats, and especially where Nebraska's agricultural operations are concerned. How does the Justice Department's budget request support the essential work of FBI field offices so that they can address the rising threats both locally and regionally?
We have numerous threats, as you well know, from China, and you discussed. And it's not, you know, we often talk about the physical threats to our citizens, but as you pointed out, the cyber threats are so very real in our country. There's not a day that goes by that we don't discuss that. There are many meetings about that. We have some very frightening actors in our country right now, and we are making many cases regarding those. I know a particular interest in Nebraska is the agro-terrorism as well to you, and that's a high priority for our Justice Department. And this happened, I believe this one was in Michigan, but it was Chinese bringing pathogens into our country. And that was a case that I'm very proud of, that our National Security Division and our FBI made very recently, though. That was in Michigan, but we're working on, by a Chinese national.
Exactly.
And, but we're working on many in Nebraska because of your farmlands, because of the demographics of your beautiful state. And I need to correct, though, I want to correct, though, that one thing that you said with the HIDA grants. I'm a career prosecutor, and those high-intensity drug grants are very important, but $196 million of that will go to the Office of Justice Programs, and we will be sure that they are administered and law enforcement receives the money that they need to continue with that.
Our law enforcement in Nebraska uses those grants, again, in a really responsible way, and they're very, very effective. across the state. I'm glad you brought up about the Michigan work that you've done there with regards to ag. Sometimes this country, because we're very, very fortunate to have food security. But when we look at that and the effect it would have on national security, if some of these adversaries that we have would interfere with that, it would be devastating, not just to my state, but to our country as well. I wanted to bring to your attention something else. We've seen evidence of rising cases of cargo theft since 2020. Estimates on the financial impacts of cargo theft are upwards of $35 billion annually. A major concern of mine, beyond the immediate harm that we see there to the multimodal supply chain, is the cartel activity that's involved in this. Transnational cartels, they're increasing to turn over that cargo theft to help fund all their criminal activities, and it's a huge increase. I applaud the administration's ongoing efforts to crack down on violent crime from cartels. I hope you would look into this new activity. How do you think the department could optimize resources for federal law enforcement and prosecutors to investigate and disrupt these very, very sophisticated criminal groups like the cartels that are behind these thefts?
On my first day, we called for total elimination of cartels and TCOs, and I believe what you're talking about in your state is through, I would imagine, I-80, interstate I-80.
Trucking, and also rail.
And the rails, but also in our states that are ports. So
Yes.
Sometimes we feel like cargo only is a port area, but it's not, because it's transported across our country. And we are on high alert and working very diligently to prevent all of that and to take out these cartels who have come into our country, and that's a very, very real threat to Americans and to your state, Senator.
Thank you again, and thank you for the good work you and your team do every single day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Attorney General Bondi, for being here today. You are, in my mind, a breath of fresh air to our Department of Justice.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for your dedication to the Constitution and for equal justice under the law. I am sorely impressed with your experience and how you have handled the Department of Justice so far. As we all know, under the Biden-Harris administration, the Department of Justice, FBI, and ATF were dangerously weaponized to target President Trump and everyday Americans, tactics more fitting of an authoritarian regime than a constitutional republic. From politically persecuting President Trump, then President Biden's chief political rival, to going after pro-life advocates like Mark Houck, the actions of the Attorney General Garland, Director Wray, and the DOJ leadership were unacceptable and unconstitutional, in my opinion. That's why I was very encouraged to see the President's FY26 budget commit to ending the weaponization within the Department of Justice and the FBI. And so can you elaborate for me, how has the Trump administration's DOJ shifted away from politically motivated investigations and refocused on its core mission, prosecuting the most dangerous criminals? And you mentioned that a little bit in your opening remarks. So if you can focus on the moving away part, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Congressman Clyde, and thank you for that. And also, our budget includes $1.2 billion and 2,444 agents for ATF. And those agents will be on the street with DEA. And thank you for letting me answer that question.
Yes, ma'am.
And we are prioritizing resources addressing illegal firearms and traffickers, and we will reduce unnecessary regulatory efforts, including what I just said about the weaponization. That's how ATF, I believe, was weaponized in the prior administration. Also, they were arresting peaceful protesters, the Biden administration, at abortion facilities. No longer. They targeted Catholics at church services. No longer. No longer will parents be arrested at school board meetings because they care about their children. That has ended under this department. That's why Donald Trump won the popular vote and the Electoral College by overwhelming margins. He made that crystal clear, and that's what's happening now in our country. That weaponization has ended. These ATF agents will be on the street fighting drugs. I have been a career prosecutor. ATF has taken thousands of guns off the streets since January 20th, working hand in hand with DEA. Drugs and guns go together. Core function, no more targeting and weaponizing our citizens by any of the agencies.
Thank you. Thank you for that
Congressman.
commitment.
Thank you.
I was delighted to see that the Department of Justice's fiscal year 26 budget also included a dedicated fund for a firearm rights restoration initiative. Can you describe this initiative a little bit and any other steps that your department is taking to restore the Second Amendment rights to Americans who are unlawfully or unjustly stripped of them by prior administrations? Can you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yes, Congressman, and that is the pardon power, of course, falls with the president, and he has been doing many pardons on that topic, and he will continue to do that, I am certain. Also, one other thing about ATF is our seizure of firearms is up 33% from this time last year.
Thank you.
Wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to ask you about the merger of DEA and the ATF, and kind of, if you'd elaborate on that. You've talked a little bit about it already. The one thing that I think is very important is that the ATF and federal firearms licensees work together, because truly FFLs are the front line when it comes to illegal purchases and just the information that is out there, and we can help each other as long as we have a good relationship with each other. And during the last administration, it was a terrifying relationship. I mean, you had the zero tolerance against federal firearms licenses. I'm sorry, we're all human. Everybody makes mistakes, okay? And they're not intentional, they're just mistakes. And when you can lose your livelihood and you can lose your business and your employees can lose their jobs over simple mistakes, that's a real problem, especially when, if you think about federal firearms licensees, they're the pathway to the Second Amendment of the Constitution. They enable individual participation in the protection of liberty. I mean, that's what federal firearms licensees do. So I think it's really important to have that critical relationship between ATF and the federal firearms licensees. And, when the inspectors, when the ATF went from the Treasury to the Department of Justice, and the inspection side of it, when the IOIs, when they were, industry operations inspectors, when they became industry operations investigators, okay? You investigate crime, you really inspect records. That was concerning to me. So my thought was maybe we could move the IOIs to the Department of Commerce, but just would get your thought on that.
Yeah, and Congressman, that's the first time I've heard about that. I would love to meet with you and learn more
Great.
about that.
I look forward
But thank you
to it.
for asking about the ATF-DEA merger. In the world in which we live, bureaucracy has been around for a very long time. And just because things have been done one way for decades and decades doesn't mean that is the most efficient way to do them in the future. And that I'm a career prosecutor. I care about ATF. I went to ATF's memorial service. We are doing everything we can to put those ATF agents on the street where they want to be. Anyone in modern day history, the years of prohibition are over. ATF, they want to be on the street. They want to be working hand in hand with DEA. That's what they do. No redundancy, no repeat of investigations. They are going to be working together, and that's what this reorganization does. And they're all going to be, it's going to be a great marriage between those two agencies. They're working hand in hand on task forces already. Now they will be working under one umbrella, and it's going to be great for our country.
Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
yield back.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, when you took over the Department of Justice and started going through all of the grants under your predecessor, did you find any that, in your opinion, constituted a waste of taxpayer money?
Yes, Senator. I don't have those specifically in front of me, but yes, Senator, there were many, and we are now going through those grants one by one. We are going through each of those grants because at the Department of Justice, we have a very obviously unique function in public safety. I will never let a grant be cut that's hurting women, victims of sexual assault, children, law enforcement officers. So we will look at those, each grant individually, to see what is fluff, what is DEI, no longer at the Department of Justice, and what are viable grants. And that money will go where it should go, to protect victims of crime and our law enforcement officers.
That's your job, isn't it?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. And you're doing that because it's your job.
Yes, Senator.
Okay. Some people say that you're being overly mean and unfair to foreign nationals who are in our country illegally. Would you care to address that?
I don't think I've been called mean recently, but
No, you've been called worse.
I was going to say probably a lot worse.
Yeah.
We will do everything in our power to get the illegal aliens out of our country who are committing crimes in our country. I have met with way too many family members who are parents, mothers, whose children have been murdered and raped by illegal aliens in our country. If that's mean, then I want to be as mean as I can be.
Well, I mean,
because we're going to get them out of our country and we're going to protect Americans.
We can agree, can we not, that legal immigration is legal,
Absolutely.
okay? And we can agree, can we not, that illegal immigration is illegal,
Yes, Senator.
okay? If you don't like the statutes with respect to illegal immigration, you can change them. But if you enforce them, as Congress has directed you to do, you're not being mean, you're just doing your job, aren't you?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. When you prosecute someone who's in our country illegally, not necessarily for a criminal matter, but just to enforce our immigration laws, are you careful to afford them due process?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. And would you consider that to be one of your priorities in terms of enforcing the laws against illegal foreign nationals?
Yes, Senator. I've been in a courtroom my entire career, and due process will be afforded.
Okay.
And the laws of this country will be enforced.
Could it be that some of the people who are criticizing you simply think that illegal immigration shouldn't be illegal?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But we will protect Americans. We will protect American families. We will protect these mothers of lost children who are murdered by illegal aliens. We will protect the widow of the trooper who was run down by an illegal alien and left a baby at home.
Let me stop you a second, General. I'm going to run out of time. Could it be that some of the people who are criticizing you, saying you're mean and otherwise for enforcing the law, believe that the board, we should have open borders. They believe that anyone should be able to come into and out of the United States whenever they want to. Could that be the motivation for that?
It could be, Senator.
Could it be that some of the people who are opposed to you think that by just allowing everybody to come into our country who wants to could help them in terms of winning elections? Could that be part of their motivation?
Well, Donald Trump won by an overwhelming majority. He won the electoral and the popular vote by an overwhelming majority, and he made it crystal clear to all Americans that he was going to close our borders and keep Americans safe. So they're running
That's
on the
what the
wrong
law
platform.
That's what the
Right,
law
that's the
requires, right?
That's the law.
And you're
So-
just enforcing the law, is that right?
Absolutely.
Okay,
And
thank
I
you.
will
Mr. Chairman.
continue to.
I'm going to answer that question, so let me get on to,
Would you like to?
I do have
I'd love to
questions
respond.
for the second round.
You'll have a second round. Would you like to speak before I call on Senator Cruz?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Bondi, welcome. Thank you for
Thank you.
your long career in public service, and thank you for your willingness to take on this incredibly important office. You know, I have to say, I don't know that there is a more important position in this new administration than the position to which you have been nominated, Attorney General of the United States. I thought the exchange just a moment ago with Senator Hirono was illustrative. She asked you how you would respond if the president asked you to target his political enemies. It's rather striking because it's not a hypothetical. It has happened over the last 4 years. And I think perhaps the most tragic legacy of the Biden-Harris administration has been the politicization and the weaponization of the United States Department of Justice. And we don't need to ask hypothetically because Joe Biden publicly mused and allowed the New York Times to report it, calling on Merrick Garland, why will he not prosecute Trump more quickly? And Merrick Garland, sadly, he sat in that chair and promised to be apolitical, and he broke that promise almost the instant he walked into the Department of Justice. If you look on the west pediment of the Supreme Court of the United States, just above the entrance, there's a simple yet profound four-word phrase, equal justice under law. We have seen over the last 4 years a Department of Justice that systematically targeted the political opponents of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and that systematically protected his friends and allies. And it is tragic to see the loss of confidence in the American people, in the Department of Justice, and in the FBI. I would note, I don't think there's an institution in America who has lost more respect from the American people than the FBI has in the last 4 years. That is a grotesque violation of the obligation of the Department of Justice and the FBI. So I want to start with just a very simple question. If you are confirmed as Attorney General, will you pledge to fairly and faithfully uphold the law regardless of party?
So help me God.
Amen. Look, and I want to be clear for folks at home. I don't want a Republican Department of Justice. I don't want a Democrat Department of Justice. I want a Department of Justice that follows the damn law. And I think the American people do too. That shouldn't be too much to expect. Now, I'm grateful to President Trump for nominating you. I think on any objective level, you're clearly qualified for this position. You have been a prosecutor for decades. You have been the elected Attorney General of the state of Florida, the third largest state in America, for 8 years. Let me ask you, in terms of your practice, how many criminal cases over the course of your career have you personally handled?
Handled thousands.
How many of those were before a jury?
Hundreds. I don't want to overstate, but hundreds. I was in a courtroom for many years. I tried 4 when I was an intern, jury trials. I think you had to try at least 20 in misdemeanor before you went to felony. Then you were in court every day, and I was also lead trial attorney for many years trying many cases. So,
And how many of those cases would have been before a judge?
hundreds and hundreds as well, but hundreds before a jury, I would assume.
And as Attorney General of Florida, how many lawyers did you supervise roughly?
Approximately 400, Senator.
Now, I also want to clarify something. During the course of this hearing, several Democrat senators have referred to you as President Trump's, quote, personal lawyer. Now I don't believe that is an accurate characterization. As I understand it, you represented President Trump as a White House special advisor during his first impeachment trial. Is that correct?
Within Office of White House Counsel, yes, Senator.
And is working within the White House counsel's office different than representing Donald J. Trump individually as his personal lawyer?
Absolutely.
How's it different?
You're working for the government. You're working for the Office of White House Counsel. You're not representing him in his personal capacity.
And so you have not represented him in his business affairs, in his personal life, or in any of the criminal trials he has faced?
No, Senator.
And you know, when it comes to weaponization, it's worth noting that in more than 2 centuries of our nation's history, no president had previously been indicted, no president had previously been prosecuted until the Biden-Harris White House came along. And in the last 4 years, we've seen Donald Trump indicted and prosecuted not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 separate times.
And 2 assassination attempts, Senator.
I have to say, Javert from Les Mis would be chagrined at the efforts of Democrats to do anything possible to take him down. And I believe the real target in this was not President Trump, but it was the American people, that these prosecutions were brought because partisan prosecutors were terrified that the American people would do exactly what they did in November of 2024 and vote to reelect Donald J. Trump.
By 77.3%. Million Americans, 77.3 million Americans.
Will you commit every day as Attorney General to follow the law, to follow the Constitution, to uphold the rule of law without favor and without regard to the partisan position of any criminal defendant?
Yes, Senator.
That's what we should all expect from an Attorney General. Thank you.
We'll now recess for 30-minute lunch break. That means
How are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
Let's actually continue on that line of questioning. I'd like to give you an opportunity to kind of answer anything that you would like, but I want to thank you for what you have done to actually close our border. When we're looking across our nation, we know that fentanyl is a leading cause of death between the ages of 18 and 45. This administration under President Trump and your leadership has said, hey, we are going to shut down the border. We're going to put the safety and security of Americans first. You have made significant strides to go after gang members, cartel members here in our interior. You have worked diligently to remove impediments to being able to prosecute those individuals. We had them in front of judiciary yesterday, a group of experts in law enforcement across the board telling us that we have thousands of cartel and gang members here in our interior. So thank you for your commitment to eliminating that threat. Talk to me about what is in this budget that will allow you to continue the work that you're doing and remove these cartel and gang members from our cities, our streets, and our communities.
Thank you, Senator. This budget requests $10 billion to bolster drug enforcement efforts and $3.2 billion for programs to combat transnational organized crime against America. And transnational crime, that's these gangs that have infiltrated, through Biden's open border policies, have infiltrated our country. Sinaloa, they want to talk about Mexico, MS-13, TDA, Venezuela. They opened their prisons in Venezuela and let these people come to our country no longer. They are so well organized. They have formed huge organizations within our country, and our DEA, our ATF, our FBI, working hand in hand, are doing everything, and with state and local authorities, are doing everything we can to stop that throughout our country. And that's why I would ask everyone to support the big, beautiful bill, because that helps our budget as well for national security.
Absolutely. And General Bondi, I want to thank you and your team. I know that ATF has seized more than 2 2,000 firearms
At the
going
border.
to Mexico.
At the
so
border.
despite the conversation we just heard, you have placed a seriousness on securing our border both ways and making sure that American citizens are safe. So thank you for the work that you are doing and all law enforcement officers that report to you.
Thank you.
I want to talk a little bit more about the asylum program. We have seen that be abused massively. We, unfortunately, people who actually need it are caught up in backlogs. Under this previous administration, numbers skyrocketed. I know that you and the people who work with you have prioritized this to make sure that we get the fraud out of the system. We saw President Biden actually, eliminate that program. Thank you for placing emphasis on it. When there is someone who needs to claim asylum, we want them to have the opportunity to do that. But the fraud is preventing us from actually hearing these cases. So talk to me about what you're doing there and what we can do to make sure that we remove that backlog and any duplicity that we see in the system.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Senator. As of May 2025, there were 3.8 million pending cases. And that was a decrease of more than 235,000 cases over a 4-month period. My budget requests $844 million for EOR, for immigration, to support the enforcement of the federal immigration laws. This supports 734 immigration judges.
Excellent.
We got rid of the bad ones who are lazy and not doing anything, and we have ones in there now who are moving cases.
Wonderful.
And we will continue to do that. But more importantly, the big, beautiful bill adds $1.25 billion for immigration. And that's so important because we have to eliminate that backlog.
Absolutely.
And our lawyers, everyone's working tirelessly to do that. And as far as the anti-fraud program, Asylum, we're doing everything to revitalize that as well.
Thank you so much. In my remaining few moments, I want to just tell you I was heartened to see your memo that created the Joint Task Force October 7th. Thank you for your commitment to getting justice for those victims, for addressing the threat that is posed by Hamas, and for combating anti-Semitism. We have seen a rise in that in the last 2 years here on our soil and particularly in college campuses. And so when we're making sure that anti-Semitism, terrorism, and civil rights violations are adjudicated and given the proper weight of the Department of Justice, I could not be more grateful. Can you talk to us a little bit about the work that task force has done, what you're seeing, and any priorities that you are pursuing to ensure that we eliminate anti-Semitism here in the United States?
Yes, thank you, Senator. It's staffed with dedicated prosecutors, agents, analysts, and linguists. And we are working hand in hand to support all of the efforts. If you're a Jewish college student now, you should be able to freely wear your star around your necklace and around your neck on a necklace and walk into college campuses.
Absolutely.
I had a young man tell me he had to take it off at a university because he was scared to death. And I was glad he took it off for his safety. You shouldn't have to do that. You should be proud of your religion, and you should be safe to practice your religion in this country. And we will continue to do everything through the October 7th task force to protect everyone in this country.
Well, thank you so much, General Bondi, for your commitment to law and order, and appreciate all you're doing to keep Americans safe.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, welcome. Welcome to the committee. Good to see you. When we visited prior to your confirmation, we had, I think, a really good discussion about some of the statistics that, unfortunately, we have held the #1 place for far too long in areas that we really don't like, in terms of the increased number of deaths due to fentanyl between 22 and 23. An increase by over 40% when other states around the country were seeing that go down. We're doing a little bit better, not enough, because one death due to fentanyl is one death too many, as we would all agree. But also when it comes to violent crime, it's stunning for many people to hear a senator like me say that Alaska's violent crime rate was more than 540% of the national average in 2023. It's like stunning, just stunning, right? And so I think we had good conversation about that, what you could do in your position to help prioritize combating violent crime. I'm going to channel a little bit of Alaskans' conversations. We don't have much of an ICE presence in Alaska. We just haven't. We had 2 Russians seeking asylum a couple years ago when the war in Ukraine broke out. ICE didn't know what to do with them because we just didn't have a presence here. And all of a sudden, we're now on the map. We have those that are being detained in our local jail that were flown up to the state several weeks ago to be detained up there. So there's a lot of chatter about what is going on. And what I'm hearing, the fear that I am hearing, and I'd like you to just put to rest some of the concerns that Alaskans are having. They're worried that immigration enforcement is being prioritized over combating violent crime. And they're worried as they're seeing FBI and DEA coming in, assisting ICE in immigration enforcement. Again, many of the stories that we're hearing, it's not necessarily criminals that they are making the news. It's one individual who has been a restaurant owner down in Soldotna for the past 20 years, and his children are all integrated into the community. You've heard these stories many, many, many times. So I need to know, for Alaskans' sake, the response as to whether or not immigration enforcement is being prioritized over combating violent crime, and whether increased resources, whether it's staff or funding, are being sent to the state to help us cover the added workload. So that's my question. You've got a runway of about 2 minutes here to help me out.
Thank you, Senator. I learned more about Alaska from you in our meeting prior to my confirmation hearing than I ever knew, and we have talked about it.
And you're still invited to come up and see for yourself.
We have a trip planned, and we have some information for you on that trip, and that also we wanted to talk about the missing and murdered Indigenous people and the tribal resource response plans. We wanted to visit some of those areas in a different setting. We can give you more details on that. Good. But we have 2 dates or 3 we'd like to run by you if that works, and 2 locations we'd like to go to. But yes, we've added 2 FBI agents in Alaska. We're adding more. Director Patel and I have talked about Alaska at great length. He met with you about Alaska as well and what we can do. I'm going to try to talk fast. We have criminally charged 39 defendants over the last 4 months under Operation Take Back America, nationwide, though, to eliminate the cartels and transnational gangs. And the District of Alaska, we have charged 39, I don't know if you knew that, 39 criminal defendants just in Alaska under Take Back America, more throughout the country. But we're going to continue to fight. Your demographic is so unusual, and the hours of darkness and the temperatures and your lack of resources and your tribal population that we are working. I have also spoken to our new Gadi Seralta, who will be our new U.S. Marshal, about getting you additional resources in Alaska. I've spoken to Gadi at length about that as well, and as soon as he is in place in office, we want to sit down and meet with you about that.
Well, I appreciate all that, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity for you to come to the state. So I am hearing you saying that you are committing more resources to this effort, which we're very thankful for, and as you have heard very clearly, we desperately needed, given the statistics as they relate to violent crime and of course, fentanyl. And so the specific ask is whether or not immigration enforcement is being prioritized over combating violent crime. And I just want to know that we're not taking the eye off the ball there.
And Senator, before you walked in, I think senators on both sides of the aisle shared that same concern, and it is not and it will not. A lot of it does go hand in hand, though, getting the illegal aliens who are violent criminals out of our country, but it will not. And I believe we've also seized 4.5, I think this is right, kilos of fentanyl since January in Alaska. But we will not forget about Alaska. We will prioritize Alaska and do everything we can to increase resources to help you and the citizens of your state.
Very good, and thank you. And I will be following up with a phone call regarding a NOFA for the delay in the release of some OVC tribal set-aside. So you've given us all encouragement to give you a call and know that we'll be doing that with regards to Mountain Village.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peters. Senator Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General, I think you're doing a fantastic job. I want to say that to you and to your team.
Thank you.
And kind of lay out sort of where I think we're going here. The threat level to this country is pretty high. Do you agree?
Yes, Senator.
Every time I turn around, there seems to be a new threat coming our way, and we're just going to have to meet the moment, and I think we will. So one thing I want you to reconsider is I think there was some termination of protective details for people that were targeted for assassination by the Iranians because of the role they played in the first term. Pompeo, Secretary Pompeo and others. I'd urge you to reconsider that, sit down with the intel folks, because I think the threat level is pretty high, and that's just something for you to take back. I think Iran does want to hurt our country. Now, back to lawlessness, that was mentioned. Can you very briefly give me the scope of the problem you've had to deal with just on illegal immigration? Yeah, I think, yeah.
The drugs.
Enormous.
The drugs, the guns, the terrorists coming into our country. I just say this because it's relevant to where we're sitting. 20 minutes away, we arrested one of the highest level members of one of the biggest gangs in the country living in Virginia. And that was through a task force that we set up with Governor Youngkin, with state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies working together.
Would you say it's been a big mountain and you're climbing it?
It's been a monument. It's been Mount Everest.
Okay.
It is monumental. It is
So
monumental.
let us help you climb Mount Everest. Mr. Hallman said that if we don't get more money into the system, we're going to hit a wall in terms of the president's promise to deport people that shouldn't be here and represent a danger. Do you agree with that, that ICE needs more funding?
Always, yes.
Okay. So reconciliation is on the way, but I just want everybody to understand, you support the president's border security budget.
I do, and Senator, the big beautiful bill gives $500 million to us, to Department of Justice, to combat drug trafficking.
Well, we're going to start the big beautiful bill, and we ain't leaving town.
$600 million for prosecute immigration matters, which are really all the issues that Senator Peters had discussed with me, and $950 million to reimburse non-sanctuary states and locals for cost that they've incurred, and $1.25 billion for other immigration issues. And I would urge everyone to support the Senate's version, which is much greater for Department of Justice than the House's version of one big beautiful bill. And I think that goes back to what Senator Van Hollen was discussing too, increasing our public safety, as well as you, Senator Moran. So thank you all for that. Thank you, Senator Graham.
As the Senate Budget Chairman, I think I will support our version of it. And I think it's needed, I'm not be joking about it. I think it's very much needed. The budget you propose will be reworked. Do you understand that we have a say in this, right?
Yes.
Okay. If we give you more money, do you think you could use it wisely?
We will always be a good steward of your money. We will put law enforcement officers on the street.
This whole
not sitting
DEA
behind
thing,
desks.
I don't know who's thinking about that, but that just makes like 0 sense to me. We'd want to be cutting the DA now and putting ATF over the DA. So, we'll agree to disagree, and I just think you're doing a great job, but that's the way our system works. We may have a different view of things, and we'll work together. I trust your judgment very, very much so. Is Mexico helping us with the drug problem?
Senator, that might be a conversation to better have in a classified setting.
Okay, well, here's what I want to say publicly. No, you're not. You need to, half your country is run by the cartels. We're never going to be safe here until we get Mexico to change their game. I'll be glad to talk to you in a private session, but enough with Mexico. You need to up your game.
The Sinaloa cartels have wreaked havoc on our country, and they continue to wreak havoc on our country.
Enough of that crap.
And the fentanyl coming in.
Yeah, we're coming after them with Mexico's help or without their help, because I don't know what the right response is to a neighbor that allows this kind of lawlessness to come into our country and kill more young people than any other method. More people dying from fentanyl poisoning coming from Mexico than anything else. And, that just needs to stop very quickly. Back to Iran. They have sleeper cells, we think, here?
We have thus far arrested 1,500 illegal Iranians in our country. That is something that I would like to talk about in a classified setting.
So
but yes, have they invaded our country?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You said Iran's a threat to America. When people chant death to America, that's kind of a tip-off they're a threat to our country, right?
And to our Jewish population, yes.
Well, to all of us. And when they swore in the recent president in July of last year, during the swearing in of the president of Iran, they were chanting death to America. So that kind of tells me where they're coming from. I guess the point I'm trying to make is Iran is threatening us in many, many ways. I do not want to live my life or our country's life giving in to bullies and religious Nazis. We're coming after your regime to change it. Nobody wants regime change for the sake of regime change. I want the regime to change its behavior. I want them to stop the policy of killing all the Jews in Israel, reject that policy. I want them to be better neighbors for the world at large. I want them to change their behavior. And if you don't want them to change their behavior, that's weird, because they kill their own people. They're hanging people in squares today. They're very oppressive. They're very brutal. They've been trying to build a nuclear weapon, and they want to use it against the people of Israel and us. So my last point is, when it comes to Iran, can you say to the Iranian regime, you will not intimidate us to do what's best to help Israel and our own national security? We're not going to be intimidated.
I think Donald Trump has said that loud and clear. We will not be intimidated, and we will keep America safe thanks to the leadership of President Trump, not only from Iran, but from Russia, from China, and from Mexico, from any foreign adversary, whether they're trying to kill us physically or by overdosing our children with drugs. We're going to do everything in our power, thanks to his leadership, to keep America safe.
Outstanding. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Graham.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You forgot to say that John's family was from South Carolina.
The upstate, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'll give you a pass on that. From Anderson, by the way. So, listen, President Trump asked a bunch of us, who would you pick for Attorney General? How many of you got asked that on our side? Probably didn't ask Dick, but he asked me. I said Pam Bondi. That's like an easy decision. I couldn't think of anybody more qualified, that he knew, that he trusted. And it's okay to have, you were his lawyer, right?
Yes, sir. I represented him when they tried to impeach him the first time as part of White House Counsel, Office of Special Counsel.
Being Trump's lawyer prepares you for many things. So, yeah, you have a longstanding relationship with the president. He trusts you. That's a good thing. That's probably why President Kennedy picked his brother, Bobby Kennedy. I guess you can say no to your older brother. I'm sure he would. But this idea there's something bad is ridiculous. Who do you pick? You pick people you know. You pick people you trust, people that you're qualified. I'm glad he picked you. He knows you, he trusts you, and you're highly qualified. So the idea that there's something wrong with that is just absolutely ridiculous. So let's talk about the job you're about to have here. Do you support making certain drug cartels in Mexico foreign terrorist organizations?
Senator, I personally went to Mexico. I personally dealt with these cartels when I was a state prosecutor, and they are a grave and violent threat to our country. Yes, Senator.
Advising the president, good. good. Now, when it comes to Crossfire Hurricane, are those days over if you're Attorney General?
Absolutely.
Okay. Lake and Riley, are you familiar with that case?
Sadly, I am, Senator Graham.
Do you know why the man who killed her was released from custody? He was paroled due to detention capacity at the Central Processing Center in El Paso, Texas. Now, that's not your call. You'll be DOJ. But do you agree with me that the statute regarding parole doesn't allow parole to be based on we don't have detention beds? There's nothing in that statute would authorize parole based on lack of capacity. Are you familiar with that statute?
Yes, sir, and that's frightening.
Yeah, well, it's frightening. Are you going to fix it?
I am going to do everything in my power to fix it if confirmed as Attorney
You're
General.
going to advise President Trump we need more beds. Tom Homan's the guy that's going to do this, but would you as Attorney General say we need more bed space so Lake and Riley never happens again?
Senator, my job, if confirmed as Attorney General, will be to keep America safe.
Do you think we need more detention space?
And that includes having enough space for violent criminals, for people that should not be in this country who have committed violent crimes. And Lake and Riley is one of many.
Yeah, but 41,000 beds in this country to detain people. We got like millions of people here illegally. We let this dude go because we didn't have any place to put him. I hope those days are over. And if, Tom, you're listening out there, I hope you'll create enough detention space to make sure we don't find this dilemma ever again. Do you think we're at war? And if so, who with?
Oh, Senator, we're at war on so many fronts.
Are we at war with ISIS?
Of course, we're at war with ISIS.
They're at war with us. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, Senator.
Do you think since our withdrawal from Afghanistan, threats to our homeland have gone up from ISIS?
Yes.
Okay, March 7th, 2024, General Corella. I assess ISIS-K retains the capability and will to attack the U.S. and Western interests abroad in as little as 6 months with little or no warning. That's March of 2024. General McKenzie, ISIS-K has a strong desire to attack the United States after it began to grow in Afghanistan following U.S. exit in August 2021. He also stated the threat to ISIS-K from ISIS-K is growing. Major General Quantock, the U.S. remains target number one for ISIS-K. Do you agree with that?
Senator, I don't have my security clearance, but from everything I've read and heard, ISIS is one of the greatest threats.
Okay, well, when you get your security clearance, you're going to find out these people are coming after us and they want to kill us. So I would like to have a strategy to deal with the ISIS threat that's beyond just the law enforcement model. Does that make sense to you, that we should use every tool in the toolbox?
Senator, that includes wrapping in our state and local officials too, and better cooperation throughout our country and our world.
I totally agree. Do you support reauthorizing FISA in 2025?
Senator, I believe 702 is up in 2026.
Okay, I'm sorry,
I believe it's 2026, and we will closely be looking at that. FISA is a very important tool.
Do you agree that the 702 provides important intel gathering capability to protect our nation?
Extremely important.
Okay. So, Pam, you're about to step into a job that's one of the most important jobs in any democracy. Let's go back to pardons. If I'm a lawyer for somebody in jail, would you promise to listen to the application and read it before you made a decision?
Yes.
Okay. No matter who you are. Good. That's the way it works. People want to bargain with you up here. Will you do this? Will you do that? All I ask you to do is call it as you see it, hire good, competent people, and give the president the best legal advice you can, run the Department of Justice in a manner that other people would want to join it one day. Growing up, I had a fondness for the FBI. I watched the show, I think it's every Sunday, wanted to be an FBI agent. Right now, the FBI needs an image overhaul. So you have a real task ahead of you in two areas: to restore trust to many Americans who have lost trust in the Department of Justice, and to make sure that this country is safe from drug cartels that are killing 3,000 Americans every 2 weeks for money, to go after these people and to protect our homeland that's under siege. I think you're the perfect pick at one of the most dangerous times in American history, and I look forward to supporting you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, welcome. Congratulations on your nomination. I'm so glad that you've been nominated, as we discussed when we had the chance to meet.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure to work with you as a state attorney general for a number of years, and I'm delighted to see you here today before the committee. I look forward to your confirmation. You will be confirmed. I, too, have taken note of the number of times you have been asked about weaponization of the Department of Justice as if it was a theoretical possibility that might happen in the future. One of my colleagues on the other side said, weaponization may well occur under your tenure. We all know that weaponization has occurred like we've never seen before in American history under this administration. And I want to get even more specific. In the last 4 years, this administration has carried out an unprecedented attack and campaign against people of faith. If you look at the numbers, we've never seen anything like it before in American history. It has been one of the most disgraceful chapters in the history of the Justice Department and in the history of the FBI. And I hope that you will reverse this and do right by every American citizen, including especially people of faith. Let me give you some specifics. After the Dobbs case was decided by the Supreme Court, over 100 pregnancy care centers and over 300 churches in this country were attacked, vandalized, firebombed. Do you happen to know off the top of your head how many prosecutions Merrick Garland's Justice Department brought in those cases?
I do not, Senator.
It's a stunning number. It's 2. Hundreds of churches, hundreds of pregnancy care centers. And I might just add, these pregnancy care centers, the attacks on them, which were violent, which were gruesome, were egged on and encouraged by rhetoric from members of Congress, including members of this body, who have said that pregnancy care centers aren't real medicine, that they're not real doctors. They have legitimized these attacks. And the same thing was true of churches. And this Justice Department couldn't lift a finger to defend these Americans, but at the same time, they used legislation, a law known as the FISA Act, to prosecute at least 53 different pro-life demonstrators, including people like Mark Houck from Pennsylvania, to whom this Justice Department sent a SWAT team to his door in the early morning hours. He has, I think, 7 children. In the early morning hours, an FBI SWAT team shows up at his door to take him into custody and prosecute him. By the way, he was acquitted. This kind of outrageous, disparate treatment has to end. So here's my question to you. Will you protect churches and pregnancy care centers when they are targeted for violence, when they are targeted for intimidation, when their members or parishioners are threatened with violence or other acts of illegal behavior?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the disparate treatment of Americans on the basis of religious faith?
Yes, Senator.
Will you stop the deliberate persecution of pro-life Americans for nothing more than their pro-life beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
Will you ensure that nothing like the Mark Houck case happens again, that Americans do not have SWAT teams arriving on their front doors with armed weapons to terrorize their children and their spouses, only in the end, of course, to have the case lost because there was nothing to it? Will you put an end to that kind of deliberate intimidation of the good American citizens on the basis of their religious beliefs?
Yes, Senator.
I'm glad to hear you say that because we need it. We need it. Ms. Bondi, we need a new chapter at the Justice Department, and we need it quickly. And I'm glad you're committed to it. Now, I also have heard you've been asked about your comment that you thought that in some cases we need to investigate the investigators, the ones who were bad. You know, I have to say I'm glad to hear you stand by that. We need to do that. You need to do that. And I'll give you another example. I'm sure you've read about this memo, which I now hold in my hands. This memo that was developed by the FBI field office in Richmond, Virginia, 23rd January 2023, targeting Catholic parishes for spying, for recruitment of infiltrators. I mean, the memo goes on and on and on about the FBI's plans to put assets into Catholic parishes, into choirs. This is an unbelievable, unbelievable assault on Americans' First Amendment rights, and we only know of it because of a brave whistleblower who came forward and released it to us. And I will tell you, I have never been misled and lied to like I was by the current Attorney General and the now former FBI Director when they sat right where you're sitting now and told this committee, oh, we don't know anything about it. Oh, only one field office was involved. It was the single work of a single field office and a very few individuals. As it turns out, that's not true. Multiple field offices were involved. Multiple individuals were involved. Under your leadership, will you put a stop to the use of FBI or Department of Justice resources to try and recruit informants and spies into Christian churches or any church or house of worship in this country on the basis of nothing more than faith?
Of course, Senator.
Let me just say this. To our knowledge, no one who was involved in the writing and performance, execution of this memo has been disciplined or fired. Will you conduct an investigation like you talked about, Ms. Bondi, that will get to the bottom of abuses like this? And to be clear, this is an outrageous abuse. It is an outrageous abuse. One of the worst abuses of Department of Justice and FBI authority in our history. Will you conduct an investigation to find out who signed off on this, who approved it, who advocated for it within the Department of Justice? Will you open the books on these abuses so that the American people can have confidence in their DOJ?
Senator, and I think what you're talking about is the ultimate weaponization, what we've been discussing all day. If I am confirmed as Attorney General, one of the first things I will do, there'll be many, but I will personally read that memo, and if Mr. Patel is confirmed, discuss it with him right away.
Fantastic. And will you work with this committee and our relevant subcommittees? I'm going to chair a subcommittee called the Crime and Terrorism Committee. We're going to do our own investigation into what happened here at the FBI and the DOJ. Will you work with us as you discover the nature of these abuses, and as you put a stop to them, will you work with us to make sure the American people get all the facts and this never happens again?
And Senator, yes, I look forward to working with you and the Democrats. I would think this is something that we can all agree on both sides, that this should not be happening in the United States of America, and work together on it.
That's fantastic. Let me ask you one other question here in my just few seconds that are remaining. This memo targeting Catholic parishes repeatedly refers to as an expert source a group called the Southern Poverty Law Center. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center has a long history as an anti-religious group that has repeatedly gone after conservative and religious organizations, called them hate groups, called them sometimes terrorist groups. They're cited in this memo. They once infamously, the SPLC called the Family Research Council a terrorist hate group, and an armed gunman came into their lobby and opened fire. Will you put a stop to the use of the SPLC as an official source for any Department of Justice memorandum or finding?
That will be one of the first things we will look at as well, Senator, and report back to you and the committee.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bond.
I would now recognize Senator Collins, the chairwoman of the full committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I very much appreciate your leadership of this important subcommittee. Welcome, Attorney General Bondi. It's good to see you. Just yesterday, I met in my office with the advocates who work with survivors of domestic violence in rural Maine. Along with Chairman Moran and other members of this committee, I was one of the lead sponsors of the Violence Against Women Act reauthorization of 2022. The programs authorized by this law are critical to reducing violence against women, ensuring that justice is administered, and strengthening services to victims and survivors of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. Despite the vital need of these programs, the department's budget request proposes to reduce funding for the Office on Violence Against Women from approximately $713 million in fiscal year 2025 to $505 million in fiscal year 2026. That's a reduction of nearly 30%. And the reductions include cuts to transitional housing assistance, the Sexual Assault Services Program, the Rural Victims Program, which I heard a lot about yesterday, and many others. Attorney General Bondi, I know that you care deeply about this issue, as do I. So why is the department cutting funding to combat domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and support of survivors? Was this cut imposed upon the department by the Office of Management and Budget?
Thank you, Senator Collins. When I began as a prosecutor, I started in the domestic violence unit. And I say it's more frightening to prosecute a domestic violence case than a homicide, because you never know the next day what will happen. We used to wake up and read the newspapers in the morning, that was before cell phones, to see if someone had been injured or hurt or killed who came in and recanted from a domestic violence incident. So it's very personally important to me as well. And we also know that many homicides are the result of domestic violence. This budget includes $505 million to prevent and respond to violence against women, including $190 million for grants to combat violence against women, STOP. And it also gives $60 million for sexual assault services. This budget is a compromise. It's a leaner budget. We can always do more with more, but we can do more with less. And you have my word that we will do everything in our power to fight for victims of domestic violence throughout this country, as I have done my entire career, Senator.
I do know and acknowledge that you care deeply about these issues, as do I. I hope we can work together to get to a better place on the budget, because I am convinced from talking with advocacy groups and with survivors themselves that we need to do more, and that oftentimes rural areas of America just don't have the services, and that's why I wanted to bring it up as my first issue with you.
May I respond to that
Please.
briefly? And yeah, about the rural issues, I didn't realize that until I became United States Attorney General and met with you, met with Senator Murkowski. The rural areas, because Florida is so highly populated, the state in which I come from, and learning that that is so true. And not only that, the tribal areas have an extremely high level of domestic violence. So I'm committed to working with you and every state on all of those issues and fighting domestic violence and sexual violence across this country. And thank you, Senator Collins.
Thank you. Let me turn to just one other issue. It's one that we discussed prior to your confirmation, in which I described to you a very serious problem in Maine, Oklahoma, and some other states, and that is the proliferation of illegal marijuana growing operations that are connected to transnational Chinese criminal organizations. When I raised this issue with the FBI director before this subcommittee in May, he testified that the FBI planned to direct more resources to the field in Maine and to increase intelligence collection in DC to target these illegal grow operations that are producing tainted marijuana, that are destroying the houses in which these grow operations occur, and I'm convinced are involved in human trafficking as well, because who would want to work in a grow operation with black mold and other dangerous substances everywhere? I'm also convinced from some of the charges, and there has been an improvement with this administration over the previous ones, that money laundering is occurring and that it is likely linked to the fentanyl trade as well. Could you provide me with an update on the deployment of federal resources so that our sheriffs, which have led the way, and our state and local law enforcement in Maine get the help that they need? I will say the IRS criminal investigation and FinCENT at Treasury have been helpful, but we do need more help from the Justice Department.
Senator, thank you. First, to the issue regarding the Chinese marijuana growers. One of the first things I did was meet with Director Patel about that. I met with DEA about that and ATF about that because it all goes together as we discussed. I thought you were going to receive a briefing on that. If not, we will make sure you receive one in a classified setting. But I can tell you that we are directly involved in many of those cases. We are looking at that closely, and we will continue to fight that and research that. And that was something else that I learned about in Maine from my very first meeting with you, but we have had multiple discussions about it, and there are active, ongoing investigations regarding that issue. As to fentanyl, we will continue to combat fentanyl. You know, fentanyl first came on the market when I was a state attorney general. And I fought my own party to get tougher legislation on fentanyl because people thought it was something you get in the hospital. It's apples and oranges. It is completely different. And as you're well aware, the precursors are made in China and they are shipped into our country. They were for the last 4 years flowing right across through our Mexican border, no longer. But DEA, FBI, all of our agencies are committed to eradicating fentanyl and other lethal drugs. Get this poison off our streets. Kids don't know they're taking it. They're overdosing every day. But the Department of Justice has, to combat the drug epidemic, $10.1 billion, DEA $3.1 billion, total positions 31,776, trial attorneys over 1,000, total agents almost 7,000, DEA agents almost 5,000. We have had many key successes with the DEA, including Salazar, Amaya, and others for trafficking millions of fentanyl pills into our country. March 7th, Gonzalez, a Mexican dual citizen from CJNG, trafficking fentanyl. Just constant fentanyl cases we've been making, and we've been doing it with limited resources, but consolidation of resources and getting our agents back on the street to keep Americans safe. And Senator, that is my primary focus as Attorney General.
Thank you, and I look forward to having that briefing. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
And I meant every word of those introductory remarks. I have the greatest deal of respect for you personally and professionally. This is a great pick by President Trump. You're going to do a great job.
Thank you. Thank you.
I do want to say, though, that it appears as though Trump derangement syndrome is alive and well. The focus of these questions today are disturbing. I don't think my Democrat colleagues learned very much from the November 5th election. The American people rejected all this. Their obsession with President Trump didn't bode well for them electorally, and I think if they stay on this path, they'll be in a permanent minority. But that's up to
112 electoral votes, Senator.
the landslide. But that's up for them. That's up to them to decide. I do want to comment a little bit, I guess, on this newfound religion on independence from the Attorney General. I will remind my colleagues that the last 3 Democratic attorneys general for the United States of America were perhaps the most politically biased AGs we've had in modern political history in the United States. And there are some receipts. Eric Holder described himself as Obama's heat shield and wingman. This committee moved forward, and one of my colleagues referenced that the Attorney General shouldn't be the wingman of the president. Eric Holder's bragged about it. He bragged about it. Loretta Lynch met with Bill Clinton on the tarmac in a private meeting while she was investigating Hillary Clinton. And Merrick Garland probably gets however many gold stars you want to give for the most politicized, weaponized Department of Justice we have ever seen. And I think it's worth exploring that, and I want to get your comment on it. To just sort of take a step back, I think part of leadership is understanding the moment that you're in and the landscape. We've never seen anything like this. And there is a story to be told. The arc of this story begins when Joe Biden gave a speech demonizing half the country, calling them threats to the republic, threats to democracy, these MAGA Republicans, and I'm going to do everything I can to make sure President Trump ever gets back into the White House. Miraculously, these zombie cases are resurrected. And let's talk about a couple of those. You've got, of course, Jack Smith, the overzealous and disgraced special prosecutor who time and time again has been slapped down by courts for overcharging and taking an overtly political position. He, by the way, in his postmortem this week, even acknowledged that it was unusual for him to be tasked with going after the political opponent of the President of the United States. It didn't stop him, though. The Supreme Court did, thankfully. But you had Jack Smith take on these unprecedented actions. You had a raid at Mar-a-Lago, staged photos at Mar-a-Lago for boxes of documents, which, by the way, boxes of documents were in Joe Biden's garage from his Senate days. And by the way, somebody who didn't register like you did under FARA, Hunter Biden was staying in. We don't know if he's compromised or not because that investigation was dropped. And give me a break that justice was meted out fairly for Hunter Biden. It wasn't. The Department of Justice went out of its way in documents to try to get him absolved of all potential crimes in the plea deal. It was only when the judge asked questions that unwound that. And they got back to the gun charge, but then President Biden did the dirty work himself. It was always going to be Plan B. You had Jonathan Sue, Biden's deputy White House counsel, coordinated with the DOJ and Jay Bratt on those classified document cases. Matthew Colangelo, who's that? The number 3 guy at DOJ goes to where? Alvin Bragg's office. Alvin Bragg then resurrects a zombie case in lawfare at a local level. Why would the number 3 person go do that? Maybe there was coordination. Maybe there was coordination, by the way, with the number 2 assistant DA in Atlanta in the Fonnie Willis case, who was meeting with the White House. Why would the White House care about a case in Atlanta? Well, the truth is everybody knows, it was on full display, this was the worst case of lawfare we've ever seen. If this was happening in another country, our State Department will be warning us about it. It's the banana republic stuff. And one of the reasons why I'm so glad that you have been put up and nominated for this position is that I think you have the ability to level set. So when the Democrats ask you questions about your independence, it is beyond ironic that we're sitting here today because of the lack of independence from Merrick Garland and Eric Holder bragging about being Obama's wingman. So I just want to ask you, you've been asked this a bunch of times, you're going to make decisions, as you always have, right, on the law and let investigations go where they're going to go, but they're not politically motivated, correct?
Yes, Senator, based on the law and the facts that apply.
And in my limited time, I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about some of your experience working with law enforcement as Florida's Attorney General. This is something that, as you and I talked about over the years, you were known for this, the collaboration you had. And I think getting the Department of Justice back to its core function of taking on violent crime, protecting the constitutional rights of Americans, but taking on violent crime is really important. And how you went about doing it, you've gotten bipartisan praise for that over the years. You've got the support of all these law enforcement agencies. That's something that you're going to continue and take forward into this office. Is that right?
Yes, Senator. Thank you so much. And I feel that my experience with that goes back to when I was a state prosecutor with state and local, our sheriffs, our police departments, our police chiefs, and then as Attorney General on a statewide basis. And now, if I'm confirmed, all of our federal law enforcement agencies. I would be very proud to supervise those.
I'll just close with this, Mr. Chairman. We heard one of my Democrat colleagues ask you the question that you're not going to pursue a case because of a name, but because of the crime. I would argue that the current Department of Justice adopted Lenin's claim, which was, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. And they did everything they could to throw President Trump in jail for the rest of his life because they didn't want to lose the ballot box. That is not what this country's about. That is not what this republic is about. But they did it. And it's up to you now to restore the integrity and I have of that agency, of the Department of Justice, and I have full confidence that you will.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
I will welcome Senator Kennedy providing color commentary throughout my question.
I will be happy to. If we ever finish this hearing this year.
And I'll point out Senator Kennedy has a new book about testing negative for stupid, so I hope I test negative for stupid. I hope I meet the threshold of
You
of
do
book
meet
type.
it, and I talk in the book about the tattoo of the Backstreet Boys on your back.
Look, I can't help that you don't want to reach young people. I think young people are the future, damn it, and I'll do whatever steps are needed.
Backstreet Boys?
That would be on Vice President Vance's playlist, I heard, that got hacked.
General Bondi, welcome. I apologize for injecting you in the middle of Senator Kennedy's antics. We can't help him. Thank you for the job you're doing. You are doing a tremendous job keeping this country safe. And our families are safer because you are on that wall. Our families are safer because you are returning the Department of Justice to its core function, which is enforcing the law and locking up bad guys. We saw for 4 years, under the Biden administration, we saw the Department of Justice politicized and weaponized, and we saw them refuse to do their core function. More than 12 million illegal aliens flooded into this country, and the Biden Justice Department seemed to think its job was letting murderers and gangbangers and rapists go. And the results in just a few months that you've been able to produce are tremendous. Arrests of violent criminals are up 125% since the Biden administration. Fentanyl trafficking prosecutions have risen 42% since fiscal year 2023. DOJ has coordinated with DHS to remove over 220,000 criminal illegal aliens this year alone. Under your leadership as Attorney General, you have helped rescue 4,000 children from predators and helped arrest 1,300 child predators and 285 human traffickers. In my home state of Texas, Operation Soteria Shield resulted in the rescue of 109 children. Thank you, Attorney General Bondi. Texans are safer because you are serving. Americans are safer because you are serving. You have a big task, cleaning up the messes of the Biden DOJ. One of the most egregious failures of the Biden Justice Department was its refusal to protect judges and Supreme Court justices. As you know, in May of 2022, an unknown individual leaked to Politico the draft of the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization, the opinion that finally overturned Roe versus Wade. That leak was a crime. It was a theft of government property under 18 U.S.C. Section 641, and it was an unauthorized disclosure of confidential information under 18 U.S.C. Section 1905. General Bondi, do you agree that leaking that opinion was a criminal act?
Senator, I can't discuss anything regarding that matter. That should answer your question.
Well, I will say this. The leak occurred in 2022, so the 5-year statute of limitations has not expired. And I'm going to ask you, if it is not happening already, to direct the FBI to investigate and find the leaker. The leaker has not been exposed, the leaker has not been identified, and the FBI has far greater investigatory tools at its disposal than does the Marshal Service. And when it comes to defending the rule of law, when it comes to the integrity of our court system, having partisan law clerks, and I believe in all likelihood it is a law clerk who leaked it, leaking opinions designed to try to pressure the court politically is a gross subversion of the integrity of the court. And so I would ask you as Attorney General to direct the FBI to use every resource possible to investigate, to find the leaker, and when you identify the leaker, to prosecute the leaker for that criminal conduct.
Thank you, Senator Cruz.
All right, I want to turn, secondly, after that decision was leaked. I believe the leak was part of a broader effort to intimidate and to threaten and harass justices into trying to get them to change their decision. And we saw mobs assemble outside the homes of multiple justices. Do you agree, General, that the mobs that came outside the homes of justices were there to intimidate the court and to try to influence the justice's decision?
100%.
Well, as you know, federal law, in particular 18 U.S.C. Section 1507, makes it a crime to picket or parade outside a judge's home, quote, with the intent of influencing that judge's decision. That statute is crystal clear. And I will point out, these protests happened in 2022. So just like the leak, the 5-year statute of limitations has not expired on these protests. But unfortunately, the Biden Department of Justice didn't give a damn about prosecuting this statute because President Biden and Merrick Garland and the political hacks at DOJ disagreed with the Supreme Court's decision in Dobbs and were perfectly fine turning a blind eye to violent protesters threatening the justices and their children. You may recall I questioned Attorney General Garland about this statute, and he admitted under oath that not a single protester had been prosecuted. And he blamed the Marshal Service. He said the problem was the Marshals, quote, didn't make arrests. Well, subsequent documents told a different story. Internal training materials obtained reveals that the Marshals were explicitly instructed not to arrest protesters under Section 1507. So the reason there was no arrest is because a political decision was made that we like what the protesters are protesting for, and we, the Department of Justice, are not going to protect the safety of justices. We're going to allow them to be victims of an intimidation and threatening campaign. Just as I asked you with regard to the Dobbs opinion, I would ask you to direct the FBI to review the footage of these protests, to review the evidence that exists in terms of who engaged in it, and will you commit that anyone who you can prove violated 18 U.S.C. Section 1507 will face consequences and face prosecution?
Senator, we currently have 63 ongoing investigations involving judges and officials throughout this country. That scene that you're showing will not happen under my watch. It will not happen under Donald Trump's presidency. It doesn't matter if you're a liberal judge or a conservative judge or justice. That will not happen.
Amen. And that point that General Bondi made is very important. I would be equally outraged if you had nuts in front of the liberal justices. I'd say arrest them and throw them in jail. Violence is unacceptable, regardless of whether I agree or disagree with your politics. And violence, particularly fueled by rhetoric by irresponsible politicians, violence can result. And tragically, it resulted in one deranged individual traveling from California to Maryland with the intention of murdering Justice Brett Kavanaugh. As you know well, this deranged individual was arrested outside the justice's house. He was arrested with a kill kit. He was arrested with a gun. with handcuffs, with duct tape, with zip ties, and with the intention of murdering Justice Kavanaugh, very possibly murdering Justice Kavanaugh's wife and 2 daughters, and potentially murdering 2 other Supreme Court justices. As you know, just this week, a left-wing Biden-appointed judge sentenced this attempted murderer, this attempted assassin, to just 8 years. The Department of Justice asked for 30 years. That's right. And that judge downward departed by 22 years. Why? Because this left-wing judge said that the attempted murderer was transgender. And because he identifies as transgender, apparently it's okay to try to kill a Supreme Court justice if your politics are sufficiently woke. Now, I know you have said the Department of Justice is going to appeal, and you absolutely should. I called this week, I believe this judge should be impeached because the judge has demonstrated she is completely unfit to be a federal judge. And what is your view of the justice of this sentence of just 8 years for the attempted murder of a Supreme Court justice?
I was speaking with our prosecutor, Ms. Mal, who did an incredible job on this case. She did an incredible job. And yet, this judge gave 8 years. And the judge also would not refer to the defendant by his biological name, referred to him by the pronouns, and was concerned about the treatment that this individual would get regarding a sex change while in prison. And we are appealing that sentence. I immediately said we are appealing that sentence.
Thank you.
But my prosecutors did an incredible job on that case.
And the judge wanted to put him in a women's prison.
Before Senator...
Not going to happen, excuse me, I'm sorry, Chairman. That's not going to happen in the Bureau of Prisons now.
Before Senator... I forgot to turn on the microphone. Let me start over again. We have 10-minute rounds. I've asked Senator Blackburn to chair between 10:30 and 11. I hope that we can have good decorum during this hearing, treat each other with respect. General Bondi, just in case you get cut off with something that you don't get to answer your question when that senator's done, if you ask me for a little bit of time, not a lot of time, but a little bit of time to finish your answer, I'd be glad to give that to you. So starting myself, you inherited a bloated bureaucracy. It requires reorientation to better serve your mission of the department. That would include reassessing grants disguised to help Americans, but many were partisan pet projects. It also requires reallocation of resources to better serve the American people. On this issue, I've got 2 questions. What updates can you share with the committee about your review and grant DOJ and grants that DOJ has reassessed? Just give us some examples, don't I know?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. During my appearance at the department's budget hearings, I acknowledged that some grants were mistakenly terminated, and we have made a process to correct that. All grant termination appeals will be individually considered for alignment with our current policies, which are strengthening law enforcement and protecting victims. Recipients are given the opportunity to appeal a grant termination consistent with the rules by writing to the Assistant Attorney General. Of the 5,800 discretionary grants that were reviewed, only 376, approximately 7%, were terminated. So far, OJP has turned back on 18 awards, 17 appeals have been denied, and the rest are actively being reviewed, with decisions expected soon.
My colleagues on the other side claim that your department has reallocated resources to immigration enforcement, and it's had a negative impact on law enforcement. We know that drugs and crimes are very much a part of immigration enforcement, so these attacks are clearly off the mark. Explain your view of these misguided assertions.
Chairman, every day our FBI, DEA, ATF, and now U.S. Marshals working on a task force with Homeland Security are out there keeping Americans safe and getting illegal aliens out of our country, many of whom have committed violent crimes in this country. Our agents will continue to fight violent crime in this country, working hand in hand. One example is right here in Washington, D.C. We have the D.C. Task Force that has been incredibly successful. We are so proud of the work that has done. We have been working hand in hand with the local officials here in D.C., and we are very proud of that work. And we're taking that to Tennessee and around this country to keep Americans safe.
I won't repeat the things I've said about Arctic frost, but we had this recent revelation yesterday of my Republican senators being targeted by the government, underscoring the point about Arctic frost. When taken in context with widespread government weaponization against Trump and conservatives in the last decade, the conduct's arguably is worse than Watergate. So I got two questions along this line. How many Department of Justice and FBI personnel have been held accountable for their partisan and constitutional questionable conduct, and what was their punishment? If you could give a few examples or follow up in writing, since there's so many people that fall into this category.
Yes, Senator. Yes, Chairman, we will.
So you want to answer that in writing? Yeah, okay.
Yes, the exact number I can answer in writing. Yes.
Okay. Was Attorney General, on the same subject, was Attorney General Garland, Director Wray, and/or President Biden's White House aware of the FBI targeting Republican senators? Did they approve it? Now, let's be clear, either they knew and allowed it to happen, or they didn't know, and if they didn't know, it points to a lack of oversight of Jack Smith's runaway case.
Chairman Grassley, that's what we've been talking about when we refer to the weaponization of government. Operation Arctic Frost was an unconstitutional, undemocratic abuse of power. During Arctic Frost, the FBI also placed 92 linked Republican individuals and Republican groups, such as Charlie Kirk's Turning Point, on their list. This is the kind of conduct that shattered the American people's faith in our government, as I said in my opening statement. We are ending this weaponization. Our FBI is targeting violent criminals, child predators, and other lawbreakers, not sitting senators who happen to be from the wrong political party. Several of your colleagues sitting at this dais were targeted, and others. We will continue to stop that throughout the Justice Department. That is the ultimate weaponization of government.
Have you sought grand jury secrecy waivers so that all of Arctic Frost documents can be produced to Congress? And if not, do you plan to do that?
Chairman Grassley, I will be working directly with Director Patel on this issue, and there's not much more we can say about the issue for obvious reasons at this time.
Okay. Public Safety Officers Benefit Program, PSOB, provides benefits to law enforcement and first responders if they're disabled or killed in the line of duty. Affected family members may also benefit. My oversight and a Government Accountability Office report shows that some claims have taken thousands of days to conclude. PSOB applicants have also informed my office that they've been left in tears with disrespectful ways they've been treated by the government. Question number 1 and 2 on this area, but I'll start just with 1. What actions have been taken to hold DOJ officials accountable for their failures to manage the program and treat applicants with respect?
Chairman Grassley, as stated earlier, there have been many terminations from the Department of Justice, and we stand by all of those. Many of those are subject to active litigation. This Department of Justice will treat everyone with respect, and we will do everything in our power to help citizens of this country. Please reach out to us with any individual cases, and I will personally look at them for you, Chairman.
Okay. So if you'll provide that information, that was my second question. So now let's go on to regarding the initial FBI 1023 document that I made public last Congress. That document mentioned 1, text messages, 2, audio recordings, and 3, financial records that allegedly approved a bribery scheme with the Biden family and foreign interest. I asked Director Patel if his predecessors made any effort to determine whether these records existed. He answered no. What steps has the department taken to determine whether these records exist? One way or another, this matter ought to be put to rest.
Chairman Grassley, I know Director Patel is working hard on this with the members of the FBI.
Okay. So we don't know if these records exist, or you just can't say that publicly at this point?
I don't want to discuss any of that publicly,
Okay.
Director.
The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act includes a safeguard to prevent political weaponization. The reauthorization mandated certain members and their staffs shall be entitled to attend any proceedings of the FISA court. Former Biden DOJ Assistant Attorney General Matt Olson drafted a privacy agreement that allowed the department to hide information from Congress during FISA proceedings. Matt Olson made a career out of targeting President Trump and his allies, so it's not surprising that he would attempt to hinder congressional oversight or cover up for the Biden regime. I want to make sure that you get rid of the ridiculous and misguided Olson memo. When can you tell me that will be done?
We will notify you, Chairman Grassley. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Durbin.
That I hear on the other side. It really is, I mean, I'm used to sort of the political debates and arguing in court and all those sorts of things. But to hear the other side of the dais talk about weaponization is truly shocking, given what we know now. And I thought what I might do is just tell a story, and these are 100% facts. Hillary Clinton, concerned about her email scandal, works with a Soros organization to cook up this Russiagate nonsense. They feed it to the intelligence agencies, and they spy, under Barack Obama's presidency, they spy on the political opponent, the Republican, running against Hillary Clinton. He gets elected. They continue the operation, and they launder this intelligence into stuff that was meant to, by the FBI and the CIA, to sideline a presidency of a duly elected president of the United States of America, to sideline him. And that continued. You heard even some people on this committee further that nonsense for 4 years. And then the FBI is involved with pre-bunking the Hunter Biden laptop story because they didn't want him to get elected again. So they pre-bunked the Hunter Biden laptop story. The American people should have been allowed to make their own judgments from that. They weren't, because the FBI called it a Russian hack and leak operation. They were meeting with social media companies every month and every week, telling them that the laptop that they knew, that they had verified in November of 2019, they knew was real and knew was his, said it was Russian disinformation. We've heard that before. And then, After Joe Biden comes in, 3 days in, they start a censorship campaign against the country, anybody who's a conservative. And now we also know that the FBI was weaponized in this Arctic frost investigation that tapped the phones of sitting U.S. senators. And also, the Republican Attorneys General Association, so let's pull in 2 more U.S. senators, Ashley Moody and myself, who were on the executive committee at that time. Charlie Kirk, political organizations they didn't agree with. This is not in the Soviet Union in the 1980s. This is in the United States of America in the last few years. And then, when they thought President Trump was on the run and there's no way people would elect him, and then he announces he's running for president, 3 days later, Jack Smith's appointed to get Trump. Fannie Willis brings charges against President Trump, and the assistant prosecutor meets with the White House counsel's office. Why would that happen? Then you have Alvin Bragg bring his charges. The number 3 person at DOJ goes to work for him to get Trump. All in the United States of America. This continued, and Senator Hawley asked the question, wrote it down, what is happening in this country? And I hope that MSNBC is still broadcasting this, because I'm sure their viewership hasn't heard this story that's gone on for 10 years. The truth is, they never forgave President Trump for coming down the escalator at all. They didn't like him, they didn't like the disruption, and they've spent the better part of a decade not just going after him, but demonizing half the country as fascists and Nazis and threats to democracy. And they have fueled this division in their inability to accept the fact that half of the country isn't deplorables, as Hillary Clinton called her, bitter clingers, as Barack Obama called them, or trash, as Joe Biden called them. That they rose up and they sat in their own jury box and they saw all this stuff play out over a decade and they rejected it. And now you have come in to clean that up, and you are doing a great job in doing that. And let me make this clear. There is a big difference between what happened under the Biden regime and the weaponization and then holding those people accountable. That is not weaponization. If that doesn't happen, this will happen all over again. So your job, as you talked about in your confirmation hearing, is so important that this never happens again. And holding people accountable who are part of this conspiracy is absolutely your job. And I'm also taking, you don't have to comment on this, your unwillingness to answer questions that have come up. I am led to believe, as a former attorney general, that that might mean there's an ongoing investigation. You don't have to talk about it. The statute of limitations may have run on some of this stuff, but not on a conspiracy. And if you're a co-conspirator in mile marker 1, even if you want to get on the exit ramp in mile marker 5, you are liable for the conspiracy in mile marker 10. And we are at mile marker 10. And I will also say what's happening in this country. What's happening with the assault on ICE officers is truly shocking. Deportations are nothing new. Bill Clinton deported 12 million people. 12 million people. You didn't see this. The radicalization that's happened on the left that plays out with political violence is real. And by the way, let me also point out that if we had a scenario where John Thune was on the Supreme Court steps saying, you've reaped a whirlwind, Supreme Court justices, and then a right-wing assassin tried to kill Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and then a Republican-appointed judge only gave that person 8 years, there would be riots on the streets. Cities would be burning right now. So let's just call it out. We need the cleansing here. Let's just be truthful about what's happening. This left-wing political alliance, violence is not a both sides thing. It's not. And so, Attorney General, I do want to ask you a couple questions about that, because I feel like we have got to get a handle on this. Despite the overwhelming evidence that the political violence threat right now comes primarily from the left, the media just won't do it. They won't go along with it. They cite a few ridiculous studies to say that right-wing political violence is the main problem. For example, one of those studies was written by an Antifa-affiliated professor, and others count classes on prison gang, and the others count classes on prison gang violence as right-wing political violence, but refuse to count anything from the 2020 Summer of Love. Antifa attacks, like the ones that set off the explosive outside Michael Knowles campus speech. We need good data. We need good data here. Will you commit to having the Department of Justice and the FBI research and release a public report on left-wing political violence?
Yes, Senator Schmidt.
Thank you. I also want to, after Antifa has laid siege on federal buildings and officers in Portland during the 2020 riots, your predecessor, Merrick Garland, dropped virtually all the cases against these defendants. You recently issued a new charging memo instructing federal prosecutors to aggressively pursue Antifa and other radical leftists wreaking havoc on our cities. What can you do to ensure that the various U.S. attorneys' offices follow through on your instructions?
Hopefully, we will have our U.S. attorneys confirmed soon. They've been held up. Now our government is in a shutdown, yet our prosecutors are still working. Getting all of our U.S. attorneys confirmed would be a huge step forward, Senator Schmidt. But yes, our attorneys throughout this country will be focusing on that.
And I want to thank you, too. So I talked to you during your confirmation hearing and also with Kash Patel of sort of, you talked about your two pillars, which is to end the weaponization and to get back to actually crime fighting. God bless. Like, that is something that the American people support, despite what you hear from the other side of the dais today. And in those conversations, we talked about you and Kash Patel getting field agents out in the field and doing the work of law enforcement. I said, I've got just the place for you, St. Louis. And St. Louis has now received the largest per capita infusion of permanent FBI agents anywhere in the country, and they're working hand in hand with local law enforcement. That's what happens when you have state leaders work with federal partners to crack down on something I hope we could all agree is a scourge for our communities, which is violent crime. But that is not, J.B. Pritzker, I guess he wants his moment. These Portland people want their moment of defying Trump. It's crazy to me. We should all be unified in this effort of making sure our laws are enforced and taking on violent crime. But I will say, in closing with this, because you referenced the shutdown, it's the same motivation. The same thing that motivates J.B. Pritzker to stand in front of the podium and defy Trump is the same motivation I hear from my Democrat colleagues now in this shutdown. It's not about anything other than the fact, and this is a clean CR. This is what they have lectured us on making sure we do 13 times in the last 4 years. This is about appeasing an increasingly radical base to prove that they're willing to stand up to President Trump. And I don't know how we get through all this unless there's a real reckoning on the other side about that reality. But in the meantime, I'm glad you're doing what your job is, which is to be the chief law enforcement officer of this country, focusing on violent crime and keeping our communities safe.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Schmidt. And despite what they're saying on the other side of the aisle, our agents are out there working tirelessly every day to make America safe. And that was Donald Trump's directive, and we will make it happen.
Thank you, Senator Schmidt. Senator Welch.
Senator, my office in April restored the Justice Department's longstanding norm on this issue. It was AG Garland who had deviated on the media investigations policy, allowing self-identified journalists using this self-serving status as a shield against being held accountable for endangering our nation's security. We have taken that policy back to the norm, and I can't comment on whether we have or have not, or do not have pending investigations.
Time has expired. Senator Lee, you're recognized.
Attorney General Bondi, thank you for being here today, and thanks for your service as Attorney General of the United States. I want to start by thanking you for acknowledging a moment ago the importance of protecting the rights of the law-abiding. In a country where there are hundreds of millions of guns, one of the most alarming, not to mention unconstitutional things the government could do is to disarm the law-abiding. It would be unfair, it would be fatal to many, it would be contrary to our constitutional system. I appreciate you standing up for that. I'm also grateful for you standing up for Gail Slater, the Assistant Attorney General over the Antitrust Division. I have full confidence in her, and I can tell you do as well. More broadly, Attorney General Bondi, through your leadership, you've returned the Department of Justice to its core mission. And its core mission, of course, involves protecting the American people, upholding the law, upholding the Constitution, and making sure that justice in our system is applied even-handedly, fairly, consistently, as the law requires, without fear, favor, or political bias making those decisions. With you as Attorney General at the helm of this great department, the Department of Justice has strengthened its efforts to secure our borders against what has been an unprecedented influx of illegal immigration. It's disrupted sophisticated networks of criminals, including people who profit immensely and have profited over the last 5 years, roughly, from a massive human trafficking and drug smuggling operation. And it also just demonstrated an unwavering commitment to the safety of American citizens. Your work has sent a clear message to criminal organizations and to criminally minded people everywhere, foreign and domestic. The rule of law in the United States will be enforced, and those who prey on the vulnerable will face especially swift and unpleasant consequences. I'd also like to commend you and FBI Director Kash Patel, Deputy Director Dan Bongino for your collaboration with state and local law enforcement in my home state of Utah in assisting with the prompt apprehension of the shooter in the tragic assassination of Charlie Kirk just a few weeks ago at Utah Valley University. Your leadership has helped reaffirm that the Department of Justice exists to preserve the rule of law, to protect the peace, the safety of the American people, and ensure that our constitutional republic endures for many generations to come. Now, due to the open border policies that we had in the previous administration, a number of individuals, a number that is unknown and unknowable, but that is estimated to be in the many millions, somewhat estimated at the low end, be in the 10 million range. Others say more like 15. Others say it's more than that. But this unknown and unknowable number of individuals came across our border illegally. And an unknown number or percentage of those people are individuals who pose significant security risks, including some who were suspected terrorists. They were all allowed to enter the United States without proper vetting, in many cases without any vetting at all. What progress have you made so far, Attorney General Bondi, in solving some of those issues related to the illegal immigration of an estimated 10, 15 million, maybe more, over the last 4 years?
Senator Lee, we are working hand in hand with Kristi Noem, of course, the Director of Homeland Security. She has been doing an incredible job. All of our agencies are working in partnership with them at the direction of President Trump. He ran on the promise of making America safe and closing our borders, and that's what he did on day one. He has also declared many of these transnational gangs as terrorist organizations, which is exactly what they are. They have been coming into our country from Mexico, from Venezuela, from other countries. They have been setting up shop right in our country. They are narco-terrorists, and it is going to stop, and it is stopping under his watch. Our task forces are working hand in hand with Homeland Security. Director Patel, Deputy Director Bongino have been going non-stop to make America safe again. That's not just a slogan. That's protecting everyone in this room. That's what we're doing as a country. We don't care if you live in Chicago. We don't care if you live in Florida. We don't care if you live in Utah. President Trump wants everyone to be safe, including right here in Washington, D.C., and that's what he's been doing. Not only that, Senator Lee, the surge of drugs in this country has been horrific over the last 4 years. DEA they have seized 4,500 kilos of fentanyl powder and 50 million fentanyl pills, which I said earlier represents 370 million deadly doses of fentanyl. These transnational gangs, it's all about drugs and money, and they are destroying our country. They are destroying our children, and a lot of this fentanyl, as we know, is made, the precursors in China. They're coming in our country through Mexico and now other places, and under Donald Trump, it's going to stop because he has secured our borders, Senator Lee.
And we're very grateful for that effort. It's interesting to note, moreover, that under the leadership of your predecessor, the Department of Justice, the FBI, and others who routinely appear before this committee, when asked about the human smuggling operation going on across our southern border, routinely denied that fentanyl was coming in significant quantities through the human trafficking operation. They stated never with any evidence, never with any ability to back it up, to prove this was the case, that these things were coming across the points of entry through vehicles, through trucks, and otherwise. We know that not to be true, and we appreciate your work in exposing that. Now, in recent months, going along with this law enforcement effort, there's been a disturbing trend. It's a disturbing trend that seems to be on the increase in recent days and weeks. That is a rise of violence directed at federal law enforcement officers engaged in immigration-related arrests, including direct physical threats, organized riots outside of detention facilities, and most tragically, of late, a fatal shooting targeting an ICE facility in Dallas. Then just yesterday, it was reported that a cartel member in Chicago put a bounty, that's right, a bounty, out there offering $2,000 on information about any ICE officer and $10,000 for those who kill an ICE officer. Now, keep in mind, this information is not for kicks and giggles. It is not for a game of Trivial Pursuit. That information, for which the cartel member would pay $2,000, is there so that others can kill an ICE officer and get $10,000. That's what that is. Can you discuss what protections are essential to ensuring the safety of ICE officers and their families, and why requirements to display personal information and prohibiting them from ever wearing any kind of covering would represent a totally unacceptable, indefensible risk to their public safety?
Senator Lee, our federal agents have been doxxed, and many of you know what that means. It has happened to you on both sides of the aisle. Our federal agents' lives have been threatened. We spoke with Apple and Google to get the ICE Block app taken down. That was reckless and criminal in that people were posting where ICE officers lived. We worked with both Apple and Google to take that down.
It's stunning, I would add here, that it took as much work as it did by you to get them to take that down. Remember, in the days following January 6th, they took down all kinds of things, including a social media app called Parler, based on very thin evidence that was later largely rebutted, suggesting that people had been manipulating Parler in order to plan the January 6th attack. That wasn't true, and they took it down. I'm glad they have taken this Block ICE app down, but it's a shame that it took as long as it did, and as much work on your part to get them to take it down.
I will tell you they were cooperative, and to correct myself, it was where they were going, the jobs they were doing. And that's what's been happening, because hundreds of organized rioters, Senator Lee, are showing up where our ICE officers are. And as you know, they have fireworks, they have gas masks. You know, they don't want our officers to be protected with their identity, yet they're wearing gas masks, they're wearing goggles, and they're
So it's okay for them
cars.
to be safe. It's okay for Antifa to be safe. It's okay for those doing the bidding of international violent drug cartels to be safe. But heaven forbid our ICE officers should be safe.
Thank you, Senator Lee.
Time has expired. Senator Coons.
Frost, the second document is a list of Republican groups and people that Arctic Frost targeted, including Charlie Kirk's group, Turning Point USA. These documents show the political weaponization of the Biden administration against Republicans. Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, good to see you. Welcome. I've been listening closely in this hearing, and I've heard over and over from my Democrat colleagues concerns about targeting political enemies, and they've accused you of all manner of things and the current president. I've also heard them said, and I just wrote it down because I wanted to be sure I heard it correctly. I've heard them say that Joe Biden never targeted his political enemies. Joe Biden never directed his attorney general to target his political opponents. That's interesting, because I could have sworn that yesterday we learned that the FBI tapped my phone. Let's look at it. We've got a list. Tapped my phone, tapped Lindsey Graham's phone, tapped Marsha Blackburn's phone, tapped 5 other phones of United States senators. Gee, it sure looks like targeting political opponents to me, and yet I haven't heard a word from that side of the dais about any concern whatsoever. We've got nothing but concerns today, but no concern at all for a Justice Department that is tapping the phones of sitting United States senators because who knows why. They don't like them. They're members of the opposition party. They're Republicans. They're conservatives. You've seen this document, Attorney General Bondi. What was going on here? Who ordered this? Who ordered the tapping of the phones of United States senators?
Senator Hawley, I cannot discuss the details of that right now for very good reason.
You're going to do a thorough investigation into this, I trust. Is that correct?
We will be looking at all aspects of this, and I have talked to Director Patel at length about this.
And you're going to figure out who was involved in this, who signed off on it, who knew about it. You're going to get to the bottom of all of it. Is it correct?
Yes, and I've spoken to Director Patel about it, and he is committed to doing this.
Well, I can tell you, we already know many of the details. We already know that this was ordered by the Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, who reported directly to the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland. And we know that Jack Smith was on his witch hunt because he was directed to do so by the President of the United States, Joe Biden. Let's just remember. Let's take a walk down memory lane. April 2nd, 2022, the New York Times. Garland faces growing pressure. The Times says as recently as late last year, that would have been 2021, Mr. Biden confided to his inner circle he believed former President Trump was a threat to democracy and should be prosecuted. It goes on to say that Biden was frustrated with Garland and wanted him to take decisive action against Trump. Here's what we're talking about. Trump, of course, was a private citizen at the time. So he appoints his own hitman, Jack Smith, who goes after the president, former president, who goes after members of this body. You know, the thing about it, though, that really strikes me is that it didn't stop with members of the United States Senate. Did it, Attorney General Bondi? It didn't stop here at all. I mean, just as egregious, maybe more so than tapping the phones of U.S. senators, is this memo that I know you've seen before. Let's just look at it again. This is an FBI memo from the same time period, I might add, from the same time period, in which the Federal Bureau of Investigation attempts to recruit informants into Catholic parishes in this country. So here you have an administration that is activating the FBI against its political opponents and tapping the phones of United States senators. Can I just say that again for my colleagues, for the benefit of my colleagues on the other side of the dais? Tapping the phones of United States senators. This isn't hypothetical. This isn't maybe what will you do in the future. This isn't, oh, gee, can you imagine a situation? This happened. This happened. And this happened, the targeting of Catholics in this country because Joe Biden and his FBI didn't like Catholics who went to a certain kind of mass. I mean, good God in heaven, what is happening to this country? What happened under Joe Biden? Or then how about this, the infamous school board memo, where Merrick Garland, at the direction of the White House, issued a memo activating the FBI's counterterrorism division against parents who attended school board meetings and had the temerity to ask what their kids were being taught. And some of those parents were treated like this. Let's just remember. Let's remember how parents were treated. Treated like this man. That's right. A parent at a school board meeting, I think in Virginia, who was drug out of the school board meeting. He's bloodied there, you can see it. And what was the response of Joe Biden's DOJ and FBI? It was to issue a memorandum saying that people like this ought to be investigated by the counterterrorism unit. And unbelievably, they were. They were. Or how about this? Let's remember Mark Houck and the prolifers who were prosecuted for what? For going to a clinic, an abortion clinic, and praying on a sidewalk outside the abortion clinic. This is Mark Houck and his beautiful family at Mass. This man, at the direction of Joe Biden's FBI, this man had an FBI SWAT team come to his door in the early morning hours with his beautiful children there, terrorizing them with weapons drawn. He was then arrested and prosecuted. Unfortunately, a jury acquitted him. This is what was happening under Joe Biden. United States senators spied upon. Former presidents, the political opponents of the president at the time, targeted, prosecuted. Pro-lifers, targeted, prosecuted. Catholics, targeted, prosecuted. 92 conservative organizations put under surveillance, targeted for potential prosecution. Gee, I don't know. Would you call that an example of weaponization, Attorney General Bondi? Do you think that's a fair characterization?
Senator Hawley, that is the ultimate weaponization. And weaponization under Donald Trump has ended. It has ended. Harmeet Dillon is running our civil rights unit, and she is doing an incredible job. No longer will parents be targeted. No longer will parents who care about whether their elementary school children have to read a transgender book be targeted and told they cannot have any say in their child's education. That has ended under this administration. People can worship freely, whether they're Catholics at synagogues or Muslims. Everyone can worship freely. That was the ultimate weaponization. They were targeting Catholics. No longer. They have been targeting so many American citizens throughout this country. And Senator Hawley, you have been a champion of this, and thank you for being a champion of that. But under Donald Trump's watch, it has ended.
You know, I think about some of the abuses of power in this country's history, and there's been, sadly, a lot of them by members of the executive branch over the years, whether it's Watergate, whether it's what J. Edgar Hoover did in his time at the FBI, spying on many public figures, RFK, MLK, JFK, you name it. And I just have to say, what we now know happened in the last 4 years under this administration surpasses all of that. It surpasses all of it. Not just for the interference in the legislative branch, not just for the blatant disregard for the separation of powers, not just for the blatant disregard for the First Amendment, but for the targeting of ordinary American citizens who can't afford lawyers, who can't afford to mount a defense, who when the FBI knocks at their door or comes with the SWAT team, they don't know what to do. It is absolutely a disgrace. It is a stain on the history of this country and on the conscience of this country, what this administration did in the last 4 years. So here's what I think needs to happen. Madam Attorney General, I think we need a special prosecutor to be appointed whose sole responsibility will be to get to the bottom of what has happened in every instance that I have just named. I think we need to know exactly who approved the wiretaps on United States senators, who knew about it, what agents were involved at DOJ or the FBI. I think we need to know exactly who signed off on the Catholic memo, the spying memo, who was involved with it, how far did it go. I think we need to know exactly who authorized the prosecution of Mark Houck, who terrorized pro-lifers and tried to intimidate them. I think we need to know that, Mr. Chairman, this committee needs to do oversight hearings. We need to have thorough hearings into what has happened these last 4 years and this abuse that has now just been uncovered, because we have to ensure that it stops. As you just said, Attorney General Bondi, we have to ensure that it stops. This chapter in American history needs to come to a close, never to be opened again. The use of the most powerful law enforcement bodies in the world against ordinary citizens and political opponents must end once and for all. And we have a chance to do it, and it needs to be done with a thorough investigation, full transparency. And those who violated laws need to be prosecuted. I thank you for what you're doing, Attorney General Bondi. I hope that you will launch a thorough investigation. I hope you'll appoint a special prosecutor. Mr. Chairman, I hope we'll hold hearings. And with that, I yield.
Yeah. Before I call on Blumenthal, I want to, without objection, introduce into the record a document that General Bondi helped to declassify. The document is array FBI
employees. Well, I believe the spokesperson for that letter was also the spokesperson for Jack Smith.
Senator Brett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. General Bondi, I want to talk to you about the next generation. I want to talk to you about our kids, people who don't have a seat at the table but need us to fight for them tirelessly. When you look at this, I see a couple of different buckets of ways that bad actors are taking advantage of our children, and in some of the most extreme situations, we lose that child, whether to death or to self-harm, and I think we owe it to them to do something about it. So first is social media. Tell me, what are you doing? I have sat across from a number of parents who have talked to me about their child either falling victim to sextortion, different schemes that are online. We also know that there is an element of human trafficking that comes here. Let's start with social media. What are you doing to hold bad actors accountable, to track them down, and to keep our kids safe?
Senator, first, thank you for bringing that up. This, I believe, is what an oversight hearing should be about.
Thank you.
Not yell, oh, he's gone already. He comes in and leaves. This is what an oversight hearing should be about, trying to help parents and children online. Yes, Director Patel has been doing a great job. The FBI, we have an entire unit. Not only that, our National Security Division is working internationally.
Well, and I want to talk about that too, because I think a lot of this comes from overseas.
Yes.
And so whether it's these schemes, the sextortion schemes,
Yes.
et cetera, it's happening off our shores. How are you connecting the dots there? And then additionally, let's look at human trafficking. And you find a number of times people are lured into this from posts on social media. I believe that that is a global trafficking ring. I would like to speak to what are you doing to make sure that you're holding those people accountable and getting to the bottom of it, finding bad actors and making sure that we're keeping these children safe.
Senator Britt, we have made countless cases around this country, and many of them have involved global, international defendants. In fact, we've been extraditing some of them back. As many as we can get, we're bringing them back to this country. That's how we're holding them accountable and locking them up for as long as we humanly can lock them up. And Director Patel, our National Security Division, have been working tirelessly on that. We have entire units working on that. I think the most
Do you feel like you've made better strides than we saw over the last 4 years?
We have made incredible strides. I'm sorry, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but yes, we have made, I'll
I would
provide
love to
those
get
you.
those from you. I want to make sure that we are doing that. I also obviously have worked diligently alongside Senator Blackburn and so many others to put the proper guardrails in place when it comes to social media to prevent these things from happening to our children, allowing them to still thrive online, but knowing the threats that are out there, it is incumbent upon us to actually do something about it. So I hope that those different pieces of legislation that would help keep kids safe, help give you additional tools, I hope that this body and ultimately Congress will take those up.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah, sure.
That parents also, I always say your child has no right to privacy on the internet. And parents need to monitor what their kids are doing. Now, we all know that even elementary kids, school kids, so many of them have cell phones because they're at school, they're latchkey kids, they're riding the bus home. So many children have cell phones, but parents, you have to monitor. There are safeguards you can put on the phone, but you have to monitor what your kids are doing on the internet
I do
as well.
think that there is some accountability that needs to be held even with social media providers.
Absolutely.
Because I know that, for instance, we had a judiciary subcommittee hearing where we heard from parent after parent whose child had bought something online that they thought to be maybe a different type of drug. It was laced with fentanyl and they died. If that was happening on a storefront and a small business in America, we would shut that storefront down. We must do more to hold not only the bad actors online, but also the people who allow it to happen accountable. And I hope that you'll commit to work with me on that.
I wholeheartedly agree. Thank you,
So
Senator.
staying in that vein on parents, looking at illegal gaming across again, this is a global thing, offshore, illegal gaming. We have found that young men in particular have been targeted when it comes to betting and being involved in this legal gaming. We're finding that through whether it be advertisements or things that are directly targeted to get them addicted and get them pulled in and addicted on that. When it comes to illegal gaming, will you commit to me to taking a look at what is exactly happening offshore and also how they are utilizing different spaces to actually go after our children, getting them addicted, and ultimately pulling them in?
Certainly, and I'm also sure the FBI would welcome working with you.
Wonderful. And then last but not least on that same vein, and you touched on it earlier when one of my colleagues asked you about this, but vaping. So if you're a parent and you're sitting here looking, Chinese vapes have, this is a real issue. You spoke a little bit about what you are worried will come next in this space. What are you doing to get to the bottom of that, and how are we going to make sure that these don't infiltrate our markets and ultimately don't end up in the hands of our children?
What we've been doing is we have been going around this country and we have been raiding these vape shops that are carrying these illegal drugs and shutting them down. And that's what Senator Kennedy and I were in Illinois doing. We were announcing that arrest. It was a massive arrest of illegal vapes from China, mainly coming in through China, laced with THC. Back to the, I was just saying that, back to the child predators. Since January 20th, we have made 2,580 child exploitation cases, Senator Britt. That was the number I was trying to get my hands on.
Wow. And
that's 250 more than last year.
Will you commit to continuing to go after these unregulated products and particularly make sure that they are not in the hands of our children?
Yeah, and Senator Britt, we need to do that because it's targeting our children. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Today is obviously the second anniversary of the horrific attacks on October 7th. And this morning I had an opportunity to listen to stories of some individuals that had been held hostage, some of the families that will never get their loved ones back, and some that are hoping that there is a resolution soon and they once again get to embrace their family member that they have not seen in over 700 days. It was a reminder of, one of them said, you know, I can breathe, but I can't live until this is resolved. And we know in addition to this horror and nightmare that they have been living for the past 2 years, we have seen a rise in anti-Semitism here on our soil. When we said never again actually has to mean never again. And I know that you and I spoke about this briefly when you were in front of this committee, but can you talk to me about the work that DOJ is doing to combat that rise in anti-Semitism and to hold offenders of that, to hold them accountable?
And Senator Britt, thank you for again bringing up that today is the second anniversary of that horrific attack on Israel. Donald Trump is the greatest peace president of our lifetime, probably in our history. And if anyone can resolve this, it will be Donald Trump. I've also met with many of the families of the hostages and of those who have lost loved ones. We are combating anti-Semitism throughout this country, not only through my Civil Rights Division, and we haven't really talked about Harmeet Dillon a lot today, but Harmeet Dillon runs our Civil Rights Division, and she is working with Leo Terrell, and they are combating anti-Semitism around this country. We have an anti-Semitism task force that we're forming.
Do you mind getting me an update on the progress that that task force has made, please?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. And last, in my last remaining minute, certainly appreciate the work that you're doing. I know my colleague, Senator Lee, already asked you about the attacks on ICE officers. Thank you for working to keep our federal agents safe, federal law enforcement safe. So thank you for the work that you're doing there. I do want to just talk a little bit about crime in American cities. We had a horrific event occur in Montgomery, Alabama over the weekend, and 14 people, 2 people are no longer with us, and 12 people injured. My heart breaks for every one of the victims and their families and the community at large. I'd like to know a little bit about your interagency work and talk to me about things that you find, because we have to find solutions in this space. This cannot keep happening. And what are you seeing that is, your biggest success stories and your biggest challenges you have to working to try to resolve crime throughout the country?
Well, right now, the biggest challenge is that the federal government is shut down, but we're not letting that become a challenge because all of our agents are working tirelessly. And I get almost real-time updates from my agencies, Rob Sakata, who's the Deputy Director of ATF, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino at FBI, Terry Cole, at DEA, Gadi Serralta with our U.S. Marshals, and all of our great team of lawyers and we are working nonstop to combat crime. That's Donald Trump's only directive to me, is to make America safe again, and that's what we're going to do in this country, Senator Britt.
Well, thank you for your commitment and any best practices you have or ways that you have found to tackle challenges that are effective. Please let us know. We certainly want to see every community across our state and our country safe, and we appreciate yours and President Trump's commitment to doing that.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator Britt. And I will just...
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. So I want to make sure I got this clear. If a Democrat or a Republican senator has a problem with a grant that's been canceled or reduced, you would be glad to talk to them.
Yes, Senator, and I have been doing that as well.
There have been Democratic members who called you,
They have spoken to my office, yes, Senator.
and you've tried to respond.
On either side of course, if it has anything to do with law
So-
enforcement or victims,
And that includes Senator Durbin. If he's got a problem, he can call you and you'll try to respond.
absolutely.
Thank you. How many illegal immigrants are in Chicago?
Ooh.
Does anybody know?
I do, countless. What we have seen since January 20th, Senator Graham, is a 1,000% increase in violent attacks against our ICE officers.
Right. But I just want to know, is there like 10 or 100,000? Does anybody know?
There have been multiple, and we have made multiple arrests, of course, involving violent gangs in Chicago, throughout Illinois.
Right. So the only reason I ask that is Chicago is a sanctuary city. Do they help ICE deal with illegal immigration, or are they a sanctuary city? Do you know?
They are not cooperating, and I would ask that, I wish Senator Durbin would condemn the governor for not cooperating with our law enforcement officers.
The only reason I mention this, if you're a sanctuary city, any place in the country, you're making it difficult for the rest of us. Because word gets out, if you get to a certain city, maybe Chicago being one of them, that you're home free, and that just encourages more illegal immigration. Do you deal with that? Agree with that?
I do, Senator Graham, and can I add something to that?
Sure.
Please. One of our biggest wins was against the Sinaloa cartel, and that came in Chicago. The state of Illinois has a trust act, which prevents local law enforcement from cooperating with our federal immigration authorities. And that's what I was trying to talk to Senator Durbin about. On September 15th, our partners at ICE arrested an illegal alien from Mexico for beating a 21-year-old man to death. He had been imprisoned in Illinois prior to the murder and was released under Illinois' Trust Act. We filed multiple lawsuits in Illinois for sanctuary policies, specifically in-state tuition for illegal aliens and obstructing employers from verifying citizenship. You can't make this up. On September 5th, a federal grand jury in Chicago indicted a major Sinaloa cartel boss, narco-terrorism, guns, and drug charges. On July 11th, we announced a guilty plea for Ovidio Guzman Lopez. You may know him as the son of El Chapo, one of the worst narco-terrorists in the world. In the world,
In
Senators.
Chicago.
In Chicago. In Chicago. He entered a guilty plea to drug conspiracy and 2 counts of knowingly engaging in a continuing criminal enterprise in the state of Illinois. I could continue with fentanyl. I could continue with child predators in Illinois.
Well, thank you. I think I've seen numbers over 100,000. So Chicago and other sanctuary cities, you're making it harder for us to deal with illegal immigration by doing what you're doing. And I am glad President Trump is trying to change those policies. And if you need the National Guard to bring order out of chaos, so be it from my point of view. Now let's get back to the topic sort of at hand here. About how the law is being used politically. In September 2022, Attorney General James from New York basically said in a campaign that she would go after Trump, his business transactions, and his family with full force. November the 15th, 2022, Trump announces his candidacy for president. November 2022, 3 days after Trump announced his reelection campaign, Jack Smith was appointed by Garland to be special counsel to look at classified information, document mishandling, and trying to undermine the 2020 election. In March, President Trump was indicted in Manhattan of 2023, just after announcing 34 felony counts. And what they did is they took misdemeanors and turned them into felonies by using a legal theory that no one in the history of Manhattan had ever been charged with. June 2023, a federal grand jury in the District Court for the Southern District of Florida indicted President Trump on 37 charges regarding classified information. Now, all I can say is that taking a hammer to a hard drive in bleach bit apparently doesn't make the cut. Having documents in the garage of President Biden doesn't make the cut. In August of 2023, he was indicted yet again regarding the 2020 election. So all I can say is that in September 27th, Jack Smith's team asked for my phone records and 7 other senators. Now that's just the 2024 election. Comey, are you aware of the fact that in August, Comey, then director FBI, August of 2016, was in a meeting at the White House where it was discussed that by Brennan, then CIA director, that there was intelligence that maybe the Clinton campaign was trying to cook up a narrative that Trump was a Russian asset?
Senator, I believe that has been reported publicly, but I cannot comment on that.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you. Now, this is a campaign for president in 2016. In July, they open up Crossfire Hurricane. In August, they have a discussion in front of President Biden that there's intel that maybe this is generated by his political opponent. Nothing happened. In September, are you aware of the fact that the intelligence community sent a memo to the FBI director detailing intelligence that suggests it's Clinton's campaign is behind the idea that Trump is colluding or cooperating with the Russians?
Senator, I believe that has been reported.
And that was addressed to the FBI director and Mr. Strzok, this memo. Are you aware that he told this committee, I don't recall that, the FBI director?
Senator, I can't discuss anything.
Well, I can tell you this. What the hell would you recall? You're the sitting FBI director. There's a campaign for president going on. You've opened up an investigation believing that the Republican candidate may be a Russian asset. And now all of a sudden, less than a month later, 2 months later, you have 2 inquiries, 2 events to suggest it may be his political opponent. Did anybody in the FBI inform the FISA court or anyone else about this activity that you know of?
I can't discuss that matter, as you know, Senator Graham.
Should they have? Is there a requirement by law enforcement to tell the court if their warrant is being sought or a defendant that there's exculpatory information out there about you?
In general, of course, Senator.
So, to the country, the FBI director gets a memo from the intel community. This may be all a political plot by his opponent. They didn't do a damn thing. Are you familiar with the Steele dossier?
Yes, Senator.
That was a dossier prepared and paid for by the Clinton campaign. Are you aware that it was that document was used to get a warrant on 5 different occasions against Carter Page, an American citizen?
Yes, Senator, and that has been
reported. Are you aware of the fact in February 2017, after Trump is president, the person who gave Christopher Steele the information, the Russian guy, told the FBI, the information I provided you was all bar talk, hearsay, and not reliable. Are you aware of that?
Yes, Senator.
Was there ever an effort by the FBI to tell the FISA court about evidence that the man who helped prepare the document retracted his statement?
I can't discuss that, Senator.
Should there have been?
Can't discuss that.
You wonder why we're looking at Comey? Give me a break. Why are we looking at Comey? Because he ran an FBI and personally knew about exculpatory information and let it slide. How in the hell can two FBI agents interview a man who says the document you're using against a sitting president to suggest he may be a Russian agent or Carter Page that is now no longer reliable? How does that not get to the court? Can you tell me how that doesn't get to the court? You can't, can you?
I can't, Senator, and I
Can
can't
you tell me
discuss
why my phone records, when I'm the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, were sought by the Jack Smith agents? Why did they ask to know who I called and what I was doing from January 4th to the 7th? Can you tell me that?
No, Senator, and there were 8 senators in total.
Do you think that was an abuse of power?
Senator, I cannot discuss whether there is or is not an ongoing investigation. If I may add one thing, they also wasted $50 million on what you just described, trying to put President Trump in jail prior to the election.
Before Senator Whitehouse, I want to introduce into the record what is called the Durham Annex. The annex is a declassified appendix to John Durham's report about Crossfire Hurricane. The Durham Annex contains information exposing a reported Clinton campaign plan to falsify and tie President Trump to Russia. For years, I've fought to assemble and publicize all the facts surrounding Durham investigation, Crossfire Hurricane, and related matters. The Durham Annex was declassified as a large part because of Attorney General Bondi. Colleagues were silent about the former Biden administration failure to vet Afghan evacuees. Instead of coming clean, the Biden administration dismissed and failed to answer my oversight request. Not a peep from my colleagues about these massive vetting failures. The Department of Homeland Security Inspector General confirmed these vetting failures. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and AG Bondi, thank you for your time before us today. I have found this hearing to be so instructive because it has pointed out to me the lack of caring from my colleagues across the dais when it comes to how the DOJ under Biden was weaponized, how they used this for political attack on their political opponents, and the smugness from some of my colleagues across the dais. I think they enjoyed it. I think they wanted it to continue. And I think that's why they oppose some of the reforms that you are making to actually get people out across the country and to get them working and to have people that are actually finding out what the FBI and the DOJ did. You look at what happened with Crossfire Hurricane and the way some Democrats tried to blow that up and make it some big issue and all about Donald Trump and the accusations, and of course, they've been proven wrong. You look at what has happened, what we're finding out about Arctic frost, and the way we were surveilled, and the way Senator Graham, Senator Hawley, and I, we don't know what all they got. We don't know who all they tracked. But to tap our phones, to pull that data, for these wireless companies to have allowed them to have that, and for them to use it in their investigations, how disgusting is that? And their attitude and lack of concern about the weaponization of the DOJ. I've had a couple of colleagues who have been so concerned about some bureaucrats at the DOJ and the FBI being fired. You know what? If they did wrong, not only fire them, prosecute them. And my hope is that as we look at what happened with Arctic Frost, that there will be a special counsel, that we will do our due diligence, and that those who did this wrong, this illegal activity, absolutely, they need to be prosecuted and they need to face the full extent of accountability within the law. I made a note of how resistant they are to reform. And in my opinion, what this shows is that they don't want one tier of justice. What they want is two tiers of justice. It was their play box. They could get in there and manipulate and use it to spy on us. So they saw this as something that furthered their political goal. So I am pleased that you are cleaning house. And those who have not served the American people well, fire them. They need to be gone. They need to be gone. Talk for a moment, just a moment, about what you're doing to end the weaponization.
Senator Blackburn, the weaponization against you and your colleagues should greatly concern all of us. It should concern Democrats. It should concern Republicans. Yet, we don't see that. There was a two-tier system of justice under the Biden administration. We're learning that every day. We saw Jack Smith weaponize the Justice Department against Donald Trump. We saw the Biden administration weaponize the entire Justice Department, all of the law enforcement agencies, against Donald Trump, against his family members, against his friends, for years and years, and that weaponization is over. No one is above the law, and there is a one-tier system of justice in this Justice Department. And that's what we will continue to do.
We appreciate that. And, you know, having vice-chaired the president's transition in 2016, as you remember, there was surveillance that took place on the transition and on the transition team. So this is not the first time, it's the second time. And shame be to those that have furthered those lies and what James Comey did to this country, what Christopher Wray allowed to happen to this country. I want to talk to you about Memphis, the Memphis Safe Task Force. And you, President Trump, Director Patel, the work you're doing there is really quite amazing. I had pulled those latest stats, and we had 503 arrests with the FBI task force in July and August. We've added, with your Memphis Safe Task Force, just last week, 321 arrests, 83 firearms that were seized, 7 missing children that were recovered, 28 known gang members have been arrested, and the list continues to grow. We've also gotten over 120 federal indictments. But this is really quite a success story, and I think that cities like Portland and Chicago are missing out by not having this coordinated, focused effort. And the fact that there are 13 federal and state agencies working together to make Memphis safe again. And we are very grateful about that. One of the things that we are working on is to end a cashless bail. We have a very liberal DA in Memphis that has campaigned on avoiding cash bail. And we had a good hearing on this last week. And we have legislation, Representative Stefanik and I have legislation that would end cash bail, end cashless bail in DC, and then also would remove funds from jurisdictions that practice cashless bail. Touch on that and the importance of having cash bail for that accountability, keeping those criminals off the streets.
Yeah, Senator Blackburn, first to Memphis. I was in Memphis, as you know, a few days ago with Secretary Hegseth, and we had about 1,100 officers from at least 13 agencies working hand in hand. Your Memphis police officers care. They want to be out there doing their jobs. And what we said is we have federal law enforcement officers now who have their backs. They were thrilled to have us there. The mayor, Paul Young, is working well with us. Of course, Governor Lee was there. You have been a champion of this. Senator Haggerty has been a champion of this. You both, before I was sworn in as Attorney General, you both brought this problem to my attention. You talked to Director Patel, and Director Patel was on the ground right away in Memphis attempting to make Memphis safe. But we knew we needed so much more than that. He put a huge dent in the problem. But Memphis's crime is through the roof, the highest violent crime rate in the entire country. And that's why we went to Memphis. And Memphis has welcomed us. It's an iconic city. And we want to continue to work with Memphis. And we're going to do that just like we did here in DC. The citizens have been great working with us. Violent crime shouldn't be occurring in any of these cities. And as you said, I don't understand why Chicago, why Portland, why these sanctuary jurisdictions don't want to work with the federal government.
No.
Gangs are rampant. Transnational gangs are rampant in these cities because they're harboring them, no longer under Donald Trump. Whether they want to or not, we are going to come in and make it safe for their citizens, whether these liberal lawmakers want to or not. And you know what I said regarding the DA in Memphis? I said, we're going to protect the Memphis police officers. We're going to take every single case federally that we can, because the DA has cashless bail, it's a revolving door, and no one is being held accountable. Police officers are seeing someone arrested, and they're back out on the streets the next night committing crimes. And Janine Pirro is working on that here in D.C. to change that as well. So thank you for your legislation.
We appreciate that, and the Memphis mayor is doing great. We had a Shelby County official who was trying to dox some of these officers, and she's since taken this tweet down, but she's an elected official. And she goes, attention on Peabody between McLean and Cooper, 4 fed vehicles and a trooper, men in full gear and guns on street. Hashtag pay attention, folks. This is the kind of action that is not called for. I mean, the fact that an elected official would do this, this is why we have legislation that would make it a crime to dox any federal law enforcement official when they are doing their job. And these apps, and Apple and Google say that they've removed these apps, but I tell you what, these law enforcement officers need to be protected. We appreciate that you are doing that. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Senator.
Evidence.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I know you're so pleased that we're about to the end of the day. And we thank you so much for your time and your dedication and your desire to serve. And there are several things that we work together on here in this committee, and we will need your help. Online privacy, we have never addressed. Senator Blumenthal and I have worked on that. The Kids Online Safety Act, which we are looking forward to finishing here this under President Trump's leadership so that we can protect children in the virtual space. And another portion of the work that I put a good bit of time into is combating human trafficking. And I know you have such a background in that, and we are so appreciative that you bring that background to the AG's position, because this is an issue that has languished. Now, Senator Cruz mentioned the 300,000 children that are not accounted for nearly 2 years ago. I wrote the HHS secretary. It was at about 100, it was at 75,000 at that point, and the number has increased. And there are steps that could be taken that this administration, the Biden administration, has tossed to the side. We have legislation to address those. But General Bondi, this is something that you can begin to do on day one. This administration has stopped doing fingerprints. They have stopped doing DNA testing. And because of that, we know that about 40% of the kids that come to that border are being trafficked. And there is a way to put an end to this. So we have, we think creating a database, a human trafficking database at DOJ is a good step forward. We do have legislation on that. Another thing that we're working on is having Child Protective Services actually record the interviews with children and adults to help to protect these children. But I would really like to get your commitment on the record for your help and a statement about the work that you have done in human trafficking and your commitment to ending that in our country.
Thank you, Senator. And I have not yet reviewed your legislation, but I would love to review that legislation. Yeah, I learned about the fingerprinting and the DNA when I was at the border a few months ago, and I really couldn't believe that. And while I was there, I went to a rape crisis center, and what I saw and learned at that border, there is nothing humane happening at that border.
No.
And so many women and children are being trafficked coming into this country. And when I was Attorney General for the state of Florida, I went to Mexico, and I went to a safe house, and I met victims of human trafficking, women and children. I held babies who had been trafficked.
Mm-hmm.
And what gets a young drug addicted, because they addict all these women to drugs when they're trafficked, young drug addicted mother to break free from her captor, they were sending her to New York. And when they were going to do that, what did? They were going to kill her baby. And that's what got her to break away and get to a safe house. So I am committed to fighting human trafficking alongside you, and I have not yet read your legislation.
I appreciate that. We appreciate so much your commitment to that. There is nothing compassionate about what is going on at that southern border, and we will need your attention to fix those issues. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very partisan. Senator Brett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you so much for being here today, and really glad to see your family. I had the opportunity to help them find where to come back in.
Thank you, Senator.
They are all so excited, and rightfully so, and so proud of who you are and the work that you've done. And speaking of, I think it is absolutely, completely ridiculous that anyone on the other side of the aisle would ever say that you were anything but immensely qualified for this job. From your time as a career prosecutor to then a two-time Attorney General of the third largest state with regards to all of the people that operated underneath you, with what you were able to achieve, it is truly remarkable. The United States of America could only be so fortunate if you were confirmed and to have someone of your caliber, of your intellect, and of your experience running a department that unfortunately has been run into the ground. So I think that that is full-on gaslighting, which, by the way, I had to get my children to explain to me what that was. Not only that, but to act like you would be the one that would weaponize the Department of Justice. What I have heard you say time and time and time again is that you will follow the law. And this is coming from a side of the aisle that has allowed the Biden administration, by saying nothing, they've allowed them to go after parents who are at school board meetings, who want nothing more than their children to be taught and not indoctrinated. They have allowed them to go after people who are trying to practice their faith, and they have sat idly by while the weaponization of the Department of Justice has undermined the credibility and credence that Americans believe that they should have in equal justice under the law. So I know that you will, as you have said here, you will follow the law and you will return this department to where it should be in the eyes of Americans. So thank you. And I wish the gaslighting on the other side of the aisle would stop, because from my perspective, I'm over it. And I believe that's exactly what the American people have said too. And speaking of, my distinguished colleague, who I have a great deal of respect from on the other side of the aisle, just said, tried to make you answer a question about immigrants and, quote, poisoning the blood of America, when actually the previous question by our colleague from Hawaii was illegal immigration. We are a nation of immigrants, but we are also a nation of laws. And the lawlessness under the Biden-Harris administration has made every single state in this nation a border state. I am so thrilled about what you've done when it comes to opioid use and human trafficking, and I look forward to you instituting that at the Department of Justice. Your credentials speak for themselves. When opioid and fentanyl overdoses are the leading cause of death between the ages of 18 and 45 in this nation, we need someone who takes it serious. You not only take that serious, you have a track record of proving to the American people you've done it for the people of Florida, and I look forward to what that means to the families that I have met. You talked about the families you met across Florida that showed you pictures of their loved ones that they lost, their brother, their sister, their cousin, their friend, their mother. And I know that there will be more lives that are saved as a result of your service when you are confirmed. So on that, I say thank you. And when it comes to illegal immigration, which we need to put a stop to, I want to ask you a question that you and I had an opportunity to discuss a little bit. You share my desire, I know, to not only get away from the weaponization and wokeness that we are seeing in the department right now, but really prioritizing safety and security. And I want to say thank you for that commitment and your commitment to blind justice. When we are looking at illegal immigration, the Executive Office of Immigration Review within DOJ, there have been a number of things that we have talked about with that. And I know, as you are aware, some people call it EOIR, some people call it EOR, but it houses our nation's immigration courts. Over the course of the Biden administration, the immigration court backlog has grown from 1.4 million at the end of 2021 to 3.5 million at the end of 2024. Over that same period, the Biden administration pursued policies both at DOJ and DHS to foster a culture within EOR of failure to adjudicate cases. As an example, between FY25 and FY24, immigration judges failed to adjudicate over 340,000 asylum claims. That is compared to just under 13,000 non-adjudicated asylum claims in the previous 6 fiscal years combined. Between cases dismissed, terminations, administrative closures, and failures to adjudicate, EOR during the Biden administration has allowed around 1 million illegal aliens to remain in the United States on an indefinite basis. Now, I've heard Laken Riley brought up multiple times today. Having talked to her parents, no parent should have to go through the heartbreak and tragedy that they have. And we are working diligently to rectify that and ensure that we are keeping Americans safe and secure. But a House Judiciary Committee report on this issue appropriately called it, quote, quiet amnesty, what we're talking here with EOR. Will you commit to me that if confirmed, you will make it a priority to reform the way that EOR operates and put in place measures to ensure that immigration judges actually adjudicate these claims and cases?
Yes, Senator, thank you for meeting with me in advance. And I learned so much from you about this topic. And I look forward to learning more and working with you to do everything we can to make sure that functions properly.
Thank you.
If I am confirmed, Senator.
Thank you. Well, you are going to be confirmed because America needs you. As a part of this effort, I hope that you will consider a number of things, including reinstating the performance metrics for immigration judges, similar to that were in place during the first Trump administration, and a reevaluation of the Biden administration's decisions and policies that have encouraged the use of administrative closures. And I assume I have your commitment to examine those issues thoroughly.
We'll closely examine those, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Booker.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cruz would be next, but he's not here, so I call on Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, welcome. Congratulations. Can we agree that legitimacy is important to America's criminal justice system?
Yes, Senator.
Can we agree that legitimacy is important to the Department of Justice, which in part administers our criminal justice system?
Yes, Senator.
And if Americans come to believe that our criminal justice system or our Department of Justice is acting illegitimately, that makes Americans less likely to accept the results of that system, does it not?
Yes, Senator.
And that makes Americans less likely to follow the substantive laws that we pass that are administered by the Department of Justice. Isn't that true?
Yes, Senator.
And if that happens, we have chaos, don't we?
Chaos.
And the social contract is breached, isn't it?
Yes.
Do you remember a person by the name of Michael Avenatti?
Yes.
Several years ago, he was a media star here in Washington.
An attorney, correct?
Yes. He was a media star. And many members of our media loved him because he persistently bashed Donald Trump. And he was on TV every day. He was on CNN more than Wolf Blitzer. Do you know where Mr. Avenatti is today?
I believe he's sitting in prison, Senator.
He's in jail because he was a crook. And the Department of Justice helped put him there, didn't it?
Yes, Senator.
Do you remember a gentleman by the name of Sam Bankman-Fried?
Yes, Senator.
Boy genius. So smart and so powerful that he thought he could command the tides. So smart and so powerful and so rich that he would go to meetings with serious people like Bill Clinton, like Tony Blair, looking like a slob, looking like a fourth runner-up to a John Belushi lookalike contest. And he thought it was cute. Where's Mr. Bankman-Fried today?
I believe he is in prison, and I believe that's from the Netflix series I saw as well.
Mm-hmm. Because he's a crook. And who helped put him there?
The Department of Justice, Senator.
Can we agree that there's some really, really good men and women at the Department of Justice?
many, many great men and women in the Justice Department, as well, Senator, as all the law enforcement agencies that fall within the Department of Justice. They're out there risking their lives, especially the law enforcement officers, every single day.
Can we agree, though, that there have been and may be today some bad people at the Department of Justice?
Yes, Senator.
We don't know for sure because for the last 4 years, the curtains there have been tightly drawn. But I think a minority of people there, have delegitimized America's criminal justice system. The most destabilizing act that I saw in the past 4 years, maybe in the history of the department, is when Attorney General Garland decided on the basis of dubious facts and untested legal theories to criminally prosecute a former president of the United States. And not only that, this is the special part. He decided to do it after the former president of the United States had announced that he was going to run against Attorney General Garland's boss, didn't he?
Senator, are you referring to going after a political opponent?
I think so. Now, this is one person's opinion. That kind of stupid takes a plan. And I say that because, number one, this is America. That had never happened before in America. That's the sort of thing that happens in a country whose Powerball jackpot is 287 chickens and a goat. It doesn't happen here. And I call it stupid because it broke the seal. It broke the seal. It normalized it. There are a lot of ambitious prosecutors in America, Democrat and Republican. And I'll bet you right now there's some prosecutor in a particular state thinking about, well, maybe I ought to file criminal charges against President Biden's inner circle for conspiring to conceal his mental decline. And that's the road we're headed down. And you've got to fix it, Counselor. You've got to fix it. And here's, in my judgment, what I would ask you to do. Find out who the bad guys are and the bad women and get rid of them. Find out who the good people are and lift them up. But do it on the basis of facts and evidence and fairness. Because the temptation of some people is going to be, they're going to tell you, look, two wrongs don't make a right, but they do make it even. Don't resist that temptation. Help us restore legitimacy to the Department of Justice.
Thank you, Senator.